Hey guys, tonight we're not sailing anywhere grand or glamorous. We're climbing downwards into the world nobody brags about, nobody makes souvenirs of, and nobody puts on a postcard. The invisible economy of Victorian brothels, where survival wasn't a choice, and work was just another word for debt-wearing perfume. Not the romanticized silk-draped version people imagine today. Not corsets and velvet curtains and expensive champagne. I mean the real thing. Damp walls, cold mornings, credit systems disguised as kindness, and a woman's life mortgaged before she even understood the contract. Sleep wasn't rest. It was just the pause before the next installment. Before we get too far in, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I'm doing here. No pressure. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I always love finding out which corner of the world is lying awake with me. It's always 2 a.m. for someone. Now, dim your lights, pull the blanket up to your chin. Maybe turn on a little background fan noise if you've got it. Get comfortable, or at least more comfortable than a horsehair mattress in 1857 could ever hope to be. Because tonight's story isn't about scandal, or sex, or voyeurism. It's about economics. The quiet trap most people never saw. The kind that didn't need chains, because the ledger did all the locking. We're stepping inside a world where debt was a leash tighter than morality, and freedom was the luxury no one could afford. Have you ever noticed how history loves to talk about queens, kings, generals, grand revolutions, but skips the people who were paying for it all underneath the floorboards? Victorian England is famous for industry, elegance, powdered faces, and powdered hypocrisy. But none of that satin glow existed without someone at the bottom propping it up. And more often than not, she was a woman who never had a headline and never got a goodbye. We're not here to sensationalize her. We're here to witness her, quietly, gently, the same way her life moved. Not in thunderclaps, but in little daily surrenders. So tonight, as you settle in and let your breathing slow, imagine waking up in a room that doesn't belong to you, wearing clothes that technically don't belong to you, working to repay a bill you never actually had the power to stop accumulating. Imagine starting the day already in arrears, before you even stand up. That was the quieter cruelty of the Victorian underworld. The work wasn't the prison. The debt was. And if your pillow is soft, if your room is yours, if your body belongs to you, and no ledger is waiting to tally the price of your exhaustion, you're already living a kind of freedom most people in history never met. So settle in. Breathe. Let your eyelids rest. Tonight we're not chasing the big events. We're tracing the cost of being invisible. This is mildly interesting history for sleep. And tonight's journey is the hidden economic chains of a Victorian brothel worker. Close your eyes if you want. You won't need them where we're going. Chapter 1. She wakes slowly. The kind of waking that isn't really waking so much as surfacing into the same thin layer of cold she fell asleep in. The air has weight to it, a clammy heaviness that settles on her chest before she even opens her eyes. The room is still dark enough that the corners feel like someone forgot to invent daylight there, but pale morning light pushes through the grimy window, weak, watery, and without warmth. The mattress beneath her is a lumpy thing stuffed with horsehair long past its usefulness, the kind that remembers every body before hers. A thin blanket clings to her like wet parchment. Nothing in the room insulates, not the walls, not the air, not even hope. You don't fight the cold here. You just get used to losing to it. She lies there for a moment fully awake but unmoving, because the first movement of the morning is always the most expensive. Every shift reminds her. Her bones are tired in a way sleep doesn't touch. This is the kind of tiredness that begins in the soul and trickles outward into limbs. There's a drip somewhere, slow, persistent, from a leak that no one has ever bothered to fix. A bucket waits under it. It is never empty. In this part of London, water doesn't come from taps but from ceilings. She turns her head toward the window. On the other side of the filthy glass, day is beginning, but it is a day already half spent by the time she reaches for it. The city outside does not rise gently. It grinds awake, carts rolling over cobblestones, boots striking puddles, hawkers setting up for trade. London announces itself every morning like a factory with lungs. Her room is barely wide enough for the bed and the small slanted table that doubles as a washstand. The chamber pot in the corner will need emptying, another little humiliation that lives on the list of tasks no one counts as labor, because only women do them. Clothes from the day before hang on a peg, not fine, not flattering, but functional. Wool that has outlived softness. Shoes with soles that whisper of every unpaid bill. Before she sits up, she waits for her breathing to steady, not for illness, but for resolve. Every morning requires that moment of gathering. In the ledger of her life, merely getting vertical is its own unpaid line item. She pulls the blanket aside and plants her feet on the floor. The boards are colder than the mattress by several degrees, as though the building is trying to remind her that it holds all the power. She is only renting a precarious corner of it. There is no mirror in the room. Her employers don't provide them, not because they are expensive, but because reflection encourages dignity. Too much dignity makes negotiation harder. She washes with cold water from a chipped basin, the kind that burns the skin not with heat, but with absence of it. The water smells faintly of metal and earth. There is soap, cheap, astringent, stripped of all luxury. But she uses it sparingly. Soap costs. Scent costs. Warmth costs. Everything costs except silence, and silence is the one thing she never really gets. She dresses methodically, as though putting on armor for a war she never enlisted in. Because that is what this is, a battle not of blades, but of balance sheets. People imagine the work she does is about flesh, but the true leash is debt. Every pillow she leans against, every dress she's ever worn on credit, every borrowed ribbon, every swallowed smile, all of it tallies up in an invisible account book she never gets to read. By the time she stands and crosses the room, London is fully awake, and so is her reality. The day has already taken its share of her before she's spoken a word. And this is how her life begins, morning after morning, not with a sunrise, but with a reckoning. Chapter 2. The Mattress That Owes You Money. It's morning. Bad idea. You wake to the particular cheerlessness of a London dawn in 1857. The kind of light that doesn't so much shine as it politely taps on the window, apologizes for the fog, and asks if anyone has seen the sun lately. Your eyes register a smear of gray through the grimy pane. Your back registers the horsehair mattress under you, which feels like sleeping on a sack of hedgehogs with a grudge. The blanket is thin, the chill is thick, and moisture beads on the wall as if the house itself is sweating from anxiety. You curl your toes into the frayed sheet and try to decide whether you are still part of your spine. The room is compact in the way a teacup is compact. There's a chair, sort of. There's a slant of soot on the mantel where a candle once tried its best. There's your dress, draped carefully over the chair, like a tired cat with ambitions. And there is the smell. Yes, a confident mix of coal smoke, damp plaster, old gin, and the river's gentle reminder that it is basically a long cold broth of everyone's problems. Let's talk about getting up. Bold choice. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, and your feet find the floorboards, which are exactly the temperature of a ghost's handshake. The horsehair mattress squeaks as if to say, "Come back, let's fight some more." You tug the blanket around your shoulders and shuffle to the window. The sash sticks, then gives, and the outside world hisses in. Cartwheels on wet cobbles. A costermonger singing about turnips with the angst of a poet. A distant bell ringing for someone else's troubles. You breathe, and immediately regret tasting the neighborhood. You are not here for the property values. You are here because this is where your credit reaches. You rent the room by the week if the landlady is feeling philosophical, by the night if she's feeling practical. She collects early because London is a city where money travels faster than gossip. And she likes you, in the transactional way that a shopkeeper likes a customer with exact change. Let's talk about debt, the invisible roommate. The dress on the chair is not yours in the way a cloud isn't the sky's. It's a silk that used to be brighter, carefully mended along the seams. Its best days borrowed from someone else's evening. You got it on tick, from a tallyman who writes your name in a narrow ledger with the joyless flourish of a man counting other people's breaths. Every Saturday, a cut goes to him, a cut to the landlady, a cut to the woman downstairs who rents you hairpins at a price that suggests they are forged of moonbeams. If you want a shawl that doesn't look like it's been through a small war, you can rent one by the night, too. Microtransactions, but in fabric. There's a name for this: dress lodging. A madame or a tallyman advances clothes so you can look like an evening, so you can charge evening rates, while the debt coils around your week like ivy. You work to pay the dress that helps you work to pay the dress. It's the subscription model before the internet, and the free trial expired 2 Thursdays ago. You reach for the washbowl. The water you fetched last night is still faintly gritty, London's signature mineral blend, chalk, rust, and hope. You splash your face and make the sound of a person who has been slapped by a small pond. There's no soap left. You used the last of the soft soap 3 days ago to coax a stain out of the bodice. The stain didn't budge. Of course it didn't. It's 1857. Soap has standards, and so do stains. You glance at the mantel where you keep your riches, a few copper coins, a pawn ticket, a stub of candle, a hair ribbon that wants to be cheerful but is considering retirement. The pawn ticket is your Monday plan. On Monday morning, you pawn the shawl and a good pair of boots so you can have money for rent. On Saturday evening, if you've had a decent run, you retrieve them for Sunday's promenade, because prospects are better when your ankles aren't announcing desperate from across the street. It's a delicate ballet of cold economics, and you dance it with blistered feet. Let's talk about breakfast. Lower your expectations. You tilt the bread under your arm and break off a heel. It's yesterday's bread, going on optimistic. If it resists, you soak it in the water until it surrenders, like a biscuit that has seen too much. Butter is a rumor, jam is a fairy tale. You keep a tin cup on the mantel, and if you're lucky, you'll get tea later from the coffee stall near the bridge. A murky infusion with the energy of a polite scolding. Still, it's warm, and warmth is currency. Outside, the street is waking. A boy with ink-stained fingers whistles down the alley, paper under his arm, calling headlines to anyone who can afford the news. Across the way, a woman shakes out a rug from her upstairs window and apologizes to the air for existing. Somewhere, a bell rings workhouse o'clock. You hear the cluck of a hen kept illegally on a windowsill and find yourself irrationally envious of its job security. Let's compare notes with the Middle Ages, your spiritual co-workers. If this all feels familiar, it's because the economy enjoys reruns. 2 centuries back, no, 4, women worked the stews in Southwark, on the wrong side of the river and inconveniently the right side of the bishop's jurisdiction. The Winchester geese, they were called, taxed and tolerated, sometimes even licensed, then blamed for the behavior of the men paying their wages. Clothing laws told them what to wear, fines told them what to pay. You, in 1857, have a different hat, no stripes mandated by law, and a more enthusiastic police force, but the math hasn't changed much. The city still likes your earnings and dislikes your existence. Charming. Let's talk about policing. The art of looking the other way. Technically, brothels are illegal. Practically, everything is negotiable. The constable on the beat prefers quiet streets and predictable people. If the house keeps things tidy, if the neighbors don't complain, if a coin slides across the table now and then to speed up the bureaucratic digestion, suddenly the law becomes a gentle suggestion. Order, in this universe, is a mood. You thread your hair with the rented pins, coax your dress over your shift, and feel the silk cool against your skin. It's better than being cold and invisible. You lace the bodice tighter, because that's fashion, and also a budget-friendly posture corrector. The mirror is a sliver of glass rescued from someone else's window. It shows you a face that could pass for 22 in forgiving light, and 32 under gas lamps. You are neither and both, and also a little hungry. Let's talk about choice. The menu is short. You could go straight, say the charitable ladies, their hands smelling of good soap and best intentions. Laundry work pays pennies and eats your hands. The factory near the river hires girls who are nimble with spindles and generous with their lungs. The cost of being respectable is often respectability plus starvation. You do the sums. Your sums don't lie. Respectability will have to wait until your ledgers do not include a pawnbroker's hours. You wrap the shawl, tuck the pawn ticket into your bodice for luck, and take one last look at the room. The damp patches on the wall bloom like maps of countries you'll never visit. The horsehair mattress sighs, relieved to be alone, perhaps plotting how to redistribute its lumps while you're gone. The window fogs, then clears, then fogs again, like it too is undecided about your prospects. Outside, the fog has softened the angles of the street. Gas lamps still faintly burn from the night, sulking through the morning like party guests who overstayed. You step onto the stairs, careful to avoid the splinter that knows you by your first name, and descend toward the day, which is waiting with its ledger open. Sometimes people ask, did women like you feel trapped? You'd answer, if anyone was asking, that trapped is a strong word. It suggests you can't leave, when in truth you leave all the time. Out the door, down the street, into the fog and back again, on a leash made of rent, ribbon and arithmetic. It's not shackles, it's paperwork, and paperwork is much harder to pick. Chapter 3. Sheets that have seen things. Let's talk about sheets. Courageous, tired sheets. You draw the blanket back, and there they are, slightly yellowed, impressively lived in, starched only in memory and self-respect. They smell faintly of cheap lavender water, the kind sold from a street-stall bottle that probably began life as something medicinal, then realized it had better prospects as perfume. It's the scent of "we tried," spritzed over a baseline of dust, tallow, and the occasional historical footnote. You run your hand across the linen, and it whispers in a papery way, like a letter no one remembered to send. This is linen that does not lie about its age. It has that warm bread color people like to call antique white when selling furniture with 3 missing handles. In places, you can see the faint ghost of blue, evidence of a laundress's blue bag trying to persuade the yellow to calm down. The bag is a tiny miracle of ultramarine alchemy. Unfortunately, miracles cost extra, and your house doesn't always spring for the deluxe wash. Some weeks the sheets get a holiday, a shake, a dab of lavender, and a mood. You pinch the corner, and a flake of candle soot lets go, drifting up like black snow. Last night's tallow drip is there too. A small constellation hardened into the fabric beside a shadow where someone once leaned with a match and learned about physics. You tug the coverlet, and a puff of cold dust rises, hangs in the air, and then just stays. The air in here is so still it feels paused, as if even drafts have unionized and gone on break. Your breath comes out in a pale ribbon and unravels politely toward the window without actually making it. You lie back for a moment, cheek against the pillow. It feels faintly damp with a chill that has very clear opinions about your jawline. The stuffing is old feathers and new ambitions. The quills occasionally announce themselves like tiny opinionated fish bones. They're not malicious. They just exist. You shift, find the sweet spot, then lose it 3 seconds later because gravity is a comedian. If you're wondering how often the linen changes, the answer is on a schedule inspired by optimism. Monday is washing day, if coins are lined over the weekend. The laundress comes with forearms like destiny and a copper boiler on the boil. All lye, soda and steam outside in the yard. Linen goes in like a confession and comes out lighter, chastened and slightly shrunken. But when the ledger is sulking, the house keeps a rotation that would make a card sharp proud. Turn the sheet, flip the sheet, invert the sheet, and for the grand finale, lavender it, air it, and call it freshened. It's not that anyone loves corners being cut. It's that corners are the only thing left to cut. You smooth a wrinkle, and your hand catches on a mend stitched in tiny, sober steps. Evidence of someone else's midnight with a needle. The hem is reinforced where feet remember they are human. That's the thing about these sheets. They are communal memoirs, not in a scandalous way, in a practical way. They recall that bodies are heavy, seasons are damp, and laundry is taxation with extra rinsing. Compare notes with your 14th century co-workers across time. In the Southwark stews, back when they were technically bathhouses with ambitions, at least you could get hot water with your professional hazards. Authorities blustered about cleanliness with ordinances that sounded stern in Latin and softer in practice. There were rules about the beds and the doors and the holy days, and possibly the illusion that linen could solve the moral weather. Here, in 1857, you have gaslights that make everyone look like an oil painting 4 drinks in, a more enthusiastic constabulary, and a culture that says cleanliness is next to godliness while refusing to fund the soap. Evolution is complicated. You pull the sheet up and examine the selvage, thinking about what clean costs. Laundry is a line item in your week, tucked between rent and repairs and the mysterious surcharge called being seen. A fresh set of sheets warms a room without ever being warm, the same way a smile buys you a moment's grace with a doorman. But laundry eats profits. Soda crystals, soap flakes, the coal to heat the copper, every ounce of cleanliness leaves a damp footprint on your purse. So sometimes the house air dries its conscience and you plump the pillow and hope for mercies that arrive on time. You sit up and the sheet clings. Linen has a remarkable capacity to pass judgment without saying a word. It was once flax, sun-dried along canals somewhere more optimistic than this room. Now it negotiates between skin and the climate currently believes in austerity. Your toes find the hem, and you tuck it under like a makeshift treaty. The air is visibly cold, not through magic, but through breath and window panes etched in condensation runes. Somebody's coat on a peg looks like a person considering their choices. The gas from the street sneaks through the sash and joins the general consensus that nobody's starting a fire yet. Coal wore its evening wear last night. This morning it's back in the scuttle, saving itself for someone who tips. If you're keeping a tally of textures, add this. The sheet's grain under your fingers is like rubbing a page of cheap paper, an honest drag. It's not luxury linen from a merchant's dream. It's the sturdy cousin that shows up to work. And here's all the middle-class comedy. Respectable households write entire essays about napery, damask and border patterns, laundry starch so crisp you could set your tea on it. You get cloth
that can handle a Tuesday and won't collapse at the sight of iron. Functional is a love language, just with more lint. Let's zoom out to the economy in miniature, because the sheet is telling it already. The house buys or rents linen. The laundress bills by the time.
Dozen pieces. The madam subtracts wear and tear from wages. You absorb the subtraction and convert it back into something marketable with pins and a smile. A neat bed means higher rates. Higher rates mean maybe you redeem the shawl before church bells. The linen is not only fabric, it is pricing strategy. Microeconomics, but with corners and the occasional feather. You wrap the blanket around your shoulders like a cape with low self-esteem and slide your feet to the floor. The sheet releases you with a sigh. The room quickly steals. You fold it back with more care than it probably deserves, and exactly as much care as you can afford, smoothing your hand, whereas strangers will later notice the difference without ever naming it. That's the job. Undone work, invisibly redone. Out in the street, a milkman clacks his ladle against a tin measure, and a woman coughs in meter. In here, the air is so quiet you can hear the linen resettle after you move. A tiny exhale, like an old aunt easing herself into gossip. For a second, you think of the stews long ago, the hiss of bath water, a different kind of heat, rules painted on a wall by men who never scrubbed a tub. Another century, same arithmetic. You tuck the thought away with the pawn ticket. You breathe. The lavender note hangs, polite and outmatched. You catch it and let it go. It's not much, but it's the room's handshake. And in a city that takes more than it gives, a handshake counts. Time to face the morning. Don't worry, the sheet will be here when you get back, still convinced it's the sensible one in the relationship. Chapter 4. The glowing ember of economic whimsy. Let's talk about fireplaces, shall we? Specifically, the small, sooty wonder that sits in the corner of the room, barely alive. As the first hints of dawn creep timidly through the window, like a true overachiever arriving to the office at 7 a.m. with too much enthusiasm, there's a pitiful glow emanating from your fireplace, struggling against the strict rationing of coal that defines your mornings. It's a deep, muted ember, glowing like a badger who just found out it was almost made into a coat. You take a moment to appreciate the scene. A few embers are clinging to life, having a stern meeting about how they can last until breakfast, while outside, the world prepares for its daily chaos. The crackling sound is a gentle reminder that something used to happen in this fireplace, possibly in the year of our Lord 1857, long before this ember was the last man standing in the heated debate over how warm one can actually get in the Victorian era with sarcasm and a flimsy shawl. The chilly air slips through the poorly sealed window panes, which, to be fair, were last adjusted during Queen Victoria's coronation. You can almost hear the windows laughing, saying, "Remember us? We're just here for the drafts." They're a fine reminder that insulation is really only a polite suggestion in your life. Those drafty whispers are nearly as awful as your neighbor's hound named Lord Barks-a-lot, who seems to believe it's perfectly acceptable to serenade the dawn with uncalled-for enthusiasm. Nearby, a spinning wheel sits silently, and you're left pondering how it's somehow less taxing than your typical morning routine of grappling with mismatched stockings and tea that might as well be water. Are you the only one here who's standing in front of a combusting pile of history,
hoping between gasps for warmth and dignity. No? Good to know it's a collective struggle. As you inhale the scent of damp wood mingling with the last desperate throes of coal, you can't help but wonder, if this fireplace were a person, would it be the type to tell dramatic tales of the great coal shortage while clutching a mug of hot ale like it's about to make a life-changing decision? And what about you? Are you more like the fireplace, or the damp rushes underfoot, a little pitiful, a little warm, and definitely stuck in a cycle of unending economic demand? You tuck your chin into your shawl, as if hoping to summon a supernatural force to keep you toasty, feeling like a Victorian burrito. But alas, the only warmth you have is a ritualistic hugging of the fireplace, as if attempting to comfort a pessimistic cat. And yet, there's a certain stubbornness shared by you, the fireplace, and all your fellow brothel mates. You're all scrappers in a game where warmth and comfort are less of a right and more of a relationship status, the kind that involves shared chips and awkwardly avoiding emotional conversations.
Let's consider the energy that goes into this laughable attempt at heating your abode. You've traded dignity for comfort, or possibly mere survival. It's like attempting to navigate modern dating, except with way fewer expectations and a lot more coal dust. What's a little soot on a Tuesday, you think, already 2 days behind on laundry that might as well come with its own biography? Now it's time to delve into the genuine mystery of economics in your world. The fire doesn't manage itself, and what astonishingly dwindling supplies you're enjoying aren't going to last if you rely on wishful thinking and leftover coal from last winter's oddly optimistic supply. Economists would hardly bat an eye at your conundrum, but inside these four walls, it feels like the Mayans are unfolding more intricate prophecies than you ever encountered in the local tavern's card game. You look over at the ledger, and it's like staring down the barrel of a concept that somehow brings together everything from profits to the after effects of shuffling customers in and out of the establishment. Each guest who walks through the door is a little like a rolling coin, some days heavier, some days lighter, but all contributing to a carnival of expenses that make juggling look like a straightforward affair. A cheeky grin rises in your mind as you think about how every cheeky gentleman passing through your door leaves an economic footprint behind, like a jaunty coal miner who forgot to wipe his boots before entering. Given the current economic climate, each moment you spend trying to suck warmth from the fading embers feels both hilarious and tragic. How has the world reached a point where a single log carries as much weight as a month's grocery bill? And, let's be honest, you still can't make your tea properly without sacrificing half a scuttle of coal to the gods of warmth and dignity. It's the age-old dance of supply and demand, and you're just at the back, trying to avoid stepping on anybody's toes. You pull your shawl tighter, hoping it has some magical properties that can handle another day. The fireplace coughs gently, and in that moment you smile, recognizing that even when the world tries to chill you to the bone, there's warmth to be found if you just look at it from the right, even absurd, angle. And then it hits you. The real secret isn't in the actual warmth. It's in laughter. You chuckle at the thought of how humanity always seems to bounce back, even if for you it's wrapped in a shawl, standing in front of a glorified fire pit. So, gilt-edged dreams of warmth aside, let's continue this historical journey. Because if the world is going to pass judgment on your coal-collecting efforts, it might as well do so while you have a good story to tell, right? Chapter 5. The Musty Opulence of the Parlor. Hey guys, welcome back to our little corner of slightly slumberous history, where tonight we find ourselves enveloped in something just as delightful as a lukewarm cup of tea. The lingering fragrance of dampness and the drastic measures of Victorian economics. All the while considering just how pleasingly absurd brothel life was in the 1850s. So if you've ever scratched your head at your mortgage or muttered over your utility bills, buckle up, because we're about to dive into a world where luxury meant shared wash basins and fresh was just a particularly optimistic label for bumpy floral wallpaper. Now, before you settle into your historic reverie, do me a solid. Like, subscribe, and comment. But only if you actually enjoy this, because we're not here to force anyone into enjoying history like it's a plate of cold asparagus. So, dim those lights, crank up a fan to simulate some Victorian chill, and prepare for a deep dive into the unglamorous corners of life as a parlour maid. Because guess what? Your cozy bed? It may as well resemble a cemetery for old rushes draped over dirt. Have you ever wondered what it's like to work where the wallpaper is more peeling than a bad impulse buy? Or maybe you ponder if those convenient chamber pots really add to the charm of home decor. And really, if you had to take a moment to strategize on how to avoid the joy of cold soup as your breakfast, wouldn't you just laugh a little at how far humanity has come? Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1857, right in the heart of the Victorian era, where the air is thick with the scent of privilege and decay, like a half-hearted attempt at potpourri gone terribly wrong. The faded floral wallpaper in your parlour curls at the corners, looking less like an aesthetic choice and more like the tired expression of a wallpaper that has seriously reconsidered its life choices. It creaks slightly in the humidity, like it's mockingly suggesting, hey, maybe clean me next time you're spiffing up the place. The mustiness in the air has its own backstory, and it knows exactly how to linger longer than a distant relative at Christmas dinner, as you sip on tepid tea, lightly on the edge of tepidness, lest you invite an impromptu soiree with the local rat population. You might find yourself reminiscing about the last time someone offered to host a fun evening of Victorian games. Spoiler, they never do. Because who wants to gamble on good times when rotting wood and questionable plumbing are on the agenda? And then there's that delightful creaking of the floorboards underfoot. Imagine stepping cautiously, attempting to traverse what can only be described as a time-traveling obstacle course, designed to ensure you remain deeply aware of every creak. Because surely everyone wants that kind of audience, while trying to discreetly shuffle toward the exit when the day's gentlemen start arriving. You know, the ones who seem to think they're auditioning for the role of most excessive moustache twirler in the greater London area. Ah, the guests. Each one breaching your doors like a parade of misfits, delivering a mix of scents that range from an overly enthusiastic cologne to, oh dear, the scent of last night's dinner, which might have included a particularly questionable fish. You might wonder, Is this what the upper echelons must tolerate for a slice of life among the scandalous wealthy? The insanity persists, of course. Who could forget the delightful chaos of clandestine whispers, the rustling of silk skirts, and the peculiar sounds of delighted giggles interspersed with cries of, "Oh, didn't see you there." Well, surprise, you did actually step directly into chaos, my friend. Now keep in mind that every soul who passes through your parlor adds a little something to the ledger. Yes, a ledger. Your charming little accountant of awkwardness that keeps everything in check as you juggle whiffs of possibility with the burden of endless calculations. If only you could tell them that their presence is less about wealth and more about the deep need to escape the staggering unpredictability of laundry day back home. You chuckle at the thought of them. The gentlemen covered in enough bravado flitting around the parlor like ping-pong balls, blissfully ignorant of the economic chains they've unknowingly fastened around you and your fellow workers. You huddle with friends around the dim fire, swapping stories about the latest customers, every one of them a curious character, ripped straight from a Victorian novel, minus the romantic twist. Did you hear our last guest? Claimed to be a gentleman, but I'd wager a copper his idea of a parade involves his own reflection. Laughter dances around the room, a delightful distraction from counting the minutes until the night ends, and the footfalls finally stop echoing through the space, leaving you gasping for a serene breath of fresh air. Something you can't seem to find in this gargantuan structure of faded opulence, gone unwashed. And while you resent the climate on occasion, realizing that much of your position narrates an epic saga of discomfort wrapped around a dismal paycheck, you can also see the charm of it all. Yes, it's maddeningly absurd, but there exists a camaraderie found in shared muck that transcends mere survival. So lay your head down to rest, imagining the brothel owners scribbling away in ledgers, balancing all the absurdities of life while keeping track of how many customers they've bathed in yellowed light. Because sometimes life just is as comically tangled as a ball of yarn that your cat thoroughly defeats every afternoon. And so experience the soothing lull of a Victorian house, enveloped in mustiness on your journey, where every creak and laughter echo into the vast resonance of delightful absurdity. Because in the grand tapestry of history, dear listener, comfort has never really been what it's cracked up to be. Chapter 6. The Icy Invitation of a Wash Basin. Hey guys, welcome back to our cozy little alcove of slightly absurd history, where tonight we're diving into something chillier than your last romantic encounter, the icy depths of Victorian hygiene, or, more accurately, the horrifying lack thereof. That's right. As we meander through the wintry streets of 1857 London, you might find yourself pondering, what if a forgotten wash basin could talk? Spoiler alert, it would probably complain about the guests, just like you do after a long day at work. Now, before you wrap a blanket around yourself like the human burrito you truly are, do me a ponderous favor. Like, subscribe, and comment if these sordid tales of the past tickle your fancy. It's a wee bit awkward if your feedback is just a meh, so only bestow your thumbs up if you find this to be more enjoyable than revisiting your old high school prom photos. So, snuggle under the covers, crank that thermostat up to slightly less frozen, and prepare for another adventure into the mundane but oddly twisted world of Victorian life. Ever thought about what it would be like to battle with a chipped ceramic pitcher every morning, praying it wouldn't shatter as you summon the courage to wash your face? Or maybe you've caught yourself daydreaming about life during winter, where your biggest crisis was how to keep your wash water untainted by the general filth of the day. Let's face it, we've all argued over toothpaste tubes, but have you ever fought over a basin that was as frigid as your ex on a bad date? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1857, a year determined to freeze your very soul under layers of antique decor and questionable sanitary conditions. Picture it. You're nestled in a cramped room with walls that have seen better days, peeling away like everyone's hopes of a leak-free winter. As you open your eyes, the first thing to greet you is the cold. Oh, and it's truly a frigid delight. In your cozy chamber, the light glints off a chipped ceramic pitcher and basin sitting forlornly on a rickety table, as if it's begging for companionship on this bitterly cold winter's day. The surface of the wash water is cloaked in a delicate film of ice, reflecting the harshness of London's unforgiving winter, like the enthusiasm of a banker performing a charity ball, half-hearted at best. Let's talk about that wash water, shall we? It's like the underwhelming finale of a fireworks show, promising a burst of excitement, but instead delivering a damp squib. Imagine trying to wipe yesterday's grime off your face with the Arctic remnants of last night's water, a sensation akin to slapping cold pancakes onto your forehead. A fine choice, truly. And look, if you've ever regretted your life choices while cradling a luxurious frozen yogurt, multiply that unease by a factor of 100. Yes, washing your face here means enlisting the icy depths of regret each morning. As you dip your hands into the chilly abyss, just imagine the neighbors peeking through the thin planks of your wall, witnessing the wintry battle of the brothel worker and her obstinate wash basin. Their expressions range from amusement to thinly veiled advice on how to warm up the water. A great suggestion, made with all the seriousness of a cat contemplating a leap from the sofa to the floor. Have you tried boiling it, they'd say, while completely disregarding the fact that an open flame in the brothel would immediately turn the whole place into a standing bonfire. Now that's the kind of comfort nobody bargained for, right? Meanwhile, as you're strategizing your morning routine, like an applicant for the worst reality show ever, your thoughts might drift to the deadpan reality of chamber pots and their all-too-frequent role in your life. Ever had to navigate your way to one in a pitch-black room, risking a twisted ankle and minor humiliation? It's as if the universe conspired to design an intramural sport. Chamber pot dodgeball, where the object is to make it through the night without screaming aloud. This is the life that unfolds outside your frozen cocoon. The parlor, the beating heart of the brothel, buzzes with sound, laughter, and faux charm. But the reality is cold comfort. And here you are, emerging from your beautifully oppressive chamber, battling through a sea of freezing, breathable air, mixed with something that might be morning breath. The atmosphere quivers with the low hum of mischief and misfortune, a cocktail of Victorian exuberance that only makes you realize you have to look presentable for whatever gentleman walks through that door. But before we delve too deeply into the liaisons of the day, let's address the haunting truth. Does anyone actually enjoy this process? You take a deep breath, submerge your timid, frost-bitten hands into the icy water, and in that split second, you feel like a gladiator confronting the Colosseum. Sword, or in your case, washing cloth in hand. Today, I shall emerge victorious, because if not bathing with dignity and grace was a feat worth ballads, you might as well be a hero in your own melodramatic epoch. And there you have it. You're not just a brothel worker, but a part-time explorer navigating the harsh Arctic seas of the wash basin, determined to wash away the world, even if the world feels like it's plotting against you in the form of skimpy, hot water access. As the winter chill pockets around you, you chuckle about the absurdity of your existence lingering in the shadows of forgotten luxury. Because in this era, dear listener, huddling around chipped basins and frosted decor was truly just a quirky side story in the broader tapestry of life, the comedic lowlights of the winter months that befit a diary of disappointments. So embrace the frosty ambience as you lay your head to rest tonight. And remember, sometimes we find solace not in the warmth of our surroundings, but in the sheer ridiculousness of being human, in a past so misguided it could give any sitcom a run for its money. Chapter 7. The Icy Struggles of a Brothel Worker. Hey guys, welcome back to our little realm of historical hilarity, where we dive into an era that could make your coffee date this morning seem like a luxurious escape. Tonight, we're focusing on something so frosty it might just outchill your last round of ice cream. The life of a Victorian brothel worker battling the winds of an icy wash basin. Now, before you cozy up in your blankets like an over-enthusiastic human burrito, let's pause for a moment. Ever had a kitchen sink fight you back when all you wanted was a splash of fresh water? What if, in your struggle for cleanliness, the very objects intended to help conspired against you? What if those charming nightmares of the Victorian era walked hand in hand with your daily angst, reminding you daily that comfort was a mere fantasy? Spoiler alert, those charming dilemmas will be brought to life. Do you find yourself pondering, what was it like to prepare for customers while navigating an ice-cold basin, reminiscent of that time you dipped your foot into a kiddie pool at a barbecue? Or have you ever awkwardly assessed how to make small talk while soggy, as if your days of politeness were rendered almost impossible by the very water you needed to scrub off last night's adventures? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1857, the year where fashion met frostbite, and all decorum was left at the door, or at least hidden under layers of frigid ignorance. Picture this. The sun has barely graced London with its feeble light, and you emerge from your nest of threadbare sheets, those thin layers doing little to stave off the devilish cold. You blink your eyes open to find your surroundings mirroring a poorly maintained ice rink, where even your breath looks like an art installation. But you're no ordinary morning person. Today, you're a brothel worker navigating the labyrinth of your own personal winter wonderland. A wonderland full of chipped pitchers and miscreant basins. Let's talk about that wash water, shall we? There it sits, stale and ominously glistening, like a sad punch bowl at a party that went terribly wrong. As you gingerly dip your fingers into this glacial abyss, it feels like taking a polar plunge into memories you wish you could erase. Ever try to wake up with enough courage to confront an ice-cold slap to the face? It's rather like chugging a bottle of expired milk. Quick, shockingly uncomfortable, and definitely something you're not likely to forget. If you ever took a moment to rue your life choices on a Tuesday, imagine that level of regret quantifying itself in chunks of frozen regret that reside in your wash basin. Who needs therapy when you can simply dredge through yesterday's grime with sub-zero temperatures as your emotional backdrop? Meanwhile, your neighbors might be peeking through the walls, their ears pricked up like hobbits eavesdropping on an unexpected party. They exchange knowing glances, half smirking, perhaps envisioning the perfect way to warm up that water. Have you tried boiling it? One might suggest, as if heating water over an open flame in a wooden building would yield anything but disaster. Yes, that's right. Applying heat could lead to a warm wash, but mounting property damage would quickly follow. Somehow, the idea of steaming hot towels becomes a mere fairy tale, shared among the hopeful. You take a deep breath and finally submerge your frozen fingers, feeling like a knight entering the arena of battle, unarmed, with only your damp cloth to defend your dignity. Picture yourself there, as your skin experiences the emotional roller coaster of awakening from hibernation, only to face off against yesterday's mistakes. It feels like a gladiatorial contest against a very chilly Roman Colosseum, where the only victory is survival. The patrons of the brothel don't care if last night you served them their cocktails mixed with equal measures of charm and desperation. Today, you face the ultimate humiliation. Icy waters confronting you with frozen witness. As you splash water onto your face, you're hit with mixed sensations. You're not just refreshing your appearance, you're roused from slumber only to find yourself drowning in a vortex of absurdity. The memories of sweet chamomile tea evaporate, replaced by the icy notes of splashing regret that leave you feeling like you just swam through a block of ice. Truly an invigorating morning's experience, right? And what's breakfast look like? Possibly a pastry frozen in time, or worse, flavorless porridge that echoes the blandness of these cruel mornings. As you shuffle through your day, the clinking of jewelry hits your ears, but it's deeper than mere fashion. It's the sound of desperation masquerading as glamour. Every shimmy step feels like a discourse on self-preservation, where even the most absurd thoughts seem like sincere prayers amid the absurdity of modernity's polite masquerade. Consider this, dear listener. Behind each door lies a story, each with ice-breaking moments and a cocktail of regrets that tether every woman in that brothel to her slice of resilience. You're amongst the queens of this imperfect kingdom, where tomorrow's battle would inevitably echo in a slippery alleyway filled with men's charades and mischief. Prepare yourself, for this icy ritual is only the introduction to life in this extraordinary corner of Victorian society. Though your fingers might tremble and your heart races at the thought of pure absurdity, remember, you're not just surviving today. You are curating a comedic masterpiece of historical shenanigans that resonate across time. Now, lay your head to rest beneath the grip of ridiculousness as the weight of centuries drowses upon your lids. And remember, often, the truly amusing lies not just in the past, but in the hilarity we endure with frozen fingers and hefty doses of icy resolves. Chapter 8. The Candlelit Conundrum of Needlework. Hey guys, welcome back to our cozy corner of bizarre history, where we shed light on tales even warmer than the wax dripping from your favorite scented candle. Tonight, we dive into a scene so chilly it could give your grandmother's icy stares a run for their money. The delicate world of a Victorian brothel worker, illuminated solely by candlelight. And let's just say, that light flickers a lot. Now, before you settle in with your fluffy blanket, let's take a moment to imagine this. Have you ever tried threading a needle while holding a flashlight in your mouth? Sure, it adds an element of challenge, but may I suggest it's a little less comfortable than, I don't know, having to stitch a bodice in the dim light of a rickety lamp while your fingers feel like they just shook hands with a snowman. Spoiler alert, it's not great. So, let's get cozy, dim the lights, put on a fan to simulate that charming breezy atmosphere, and get comfortable. But let's also think. What would it be like to endure a winter of endless sewing with frigid fingers? How many layers of petticoats are truly necessary when you can't feel your toes anyway? And tell me, have you ever lamented over a sewing needle as if it were a personal enemy? Maybe even a rival with a vendetta against your sanity? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1857, a year not celebrated for joy or warmth, but rather for the delightful combination of dark, cold days and the delightful jingle of coins, pocket change, frostbitten, and just as useless. You find yourself nestled into a cramped brothel, surrounded by shadows more familiar than your childhood friends. The flickering candlelight dances eerily, casting ghostly shapes on damp walls that would send any decent painting scampering away for safety. Now picture this scene. You sit on a rickety stool, the kind that squeaks in disapproval of your very existence, trying to thread a needle. The candlelight isn't helping much. It flickers and sways like a nervous dancer, as if it too is unsure about its survival through the night. The shadows wrap around you like a chilly hug from that one uncle no one wants to invite to family gatherings. And what's that smell? A delightful blend of wax and despair, with just a hint of desperation. Truly a fine aroma, just short of a candle crafted by sad witches using only the tears of the downtrodden and gingerbread. You balance your sanity and the work at hand, knowing that every stitch is another step towards putting food on the table, or at least hoping to have enough left to buy a crust of bread. Your fingers, oh, those lovely cracked sausages of yours, have become well acquainted with the pain of winter. They resemble dried apricots, only a bit more gruesome, and possibly with a mild scent of despair. Each needle prick is not just a blemish on your skin. It's a reminder of the relentless chill that bites through. Mercilessly cruel, like your last Tinder date's sense of humor. As you sew, the frigid air nips at your exposed wrists, making you wonder if perhaps you should have invested in a pair of gloves with fingers that were, well, functional. It's like attempting to bake bread with one hand tied behind your back, except the yeast is laughing at you, and instead of gluten-filled glory, you're just metaphorically icing your frozen cake with tears of frustration. Ever thought about the romantic notion of creating lovely garments when you can barely feel your fingers? It's like trying to cook an elegant ratatouille while standing in front of a mountain of frozen peas. Where do you even start? Each stitch seems to represent another moment missed, another thread tangling in the web of life, or an errant thought about why you've chosen this path. But hey, at least it's warmer than the porch. What about the sound? The ambience of whispers from the walls seems to chime in, strumming a tune of musings on lost dreams and unfathomable ambition, mingling with the occasional creak of the floor, like a cheeky floorboard trying to decide whether to reveal your every little movement. It's quieter than a squirrel at a library, but somehow the tension is louder than an opera singer trying to win the heart of an audience. Now, let's not forget the delightful task of finishing a piece. Each garment you create is designed to lure in some fine gentleman, more hopeful than intelligent, let's be honest. And what's the reward for all this hard work? A parlor full of gentlemen looking like they woke up the day before yesterday and forgot to take a shower. You ever tried getting a compliment from someone who looks like they've been on the road since the invention of dirt? Challenge accepted. So, As you finally tie off that last knot, sweat on your brow, you might sink back in your chair for a moment of victory, and then reflect. Is this the pinnacle of sartorial success? A glittering prize for navigating the dull landscape of needles and brook, for the chance of warmth in company? As you light that last candle and allow yourself a rare moment of respite, remember, every stitch tells a story, even if the narrative primarily revolves around how to keep your hands from actually falling off. In this candlelit corner of history, as laughter dances like the flames around you, know there's warmth to be found, though it may be coming from your resilient spirit trying to thaw frozen digits on a sewing day that appears endless. Yes, you might be tired, but don't forget, in a world of icy struggles, even the smallest, most ridiculous moments count. Sleep tight, dear listener, for tomorrow we'll embark on even more mildly interesting adventures through the absurdity of history. Chapter 9. The Resilient Wallflower of the Brothel. Hey guys, welcome back to our whimsical wander through the annals of history. Tonight, we stroll down the slightly damp alleys of Victorian London, where the shadows hold more secrets than a magician's hat and the faint smell of, well, let's just say, less than rosy aromas wafts through the air. Tonight, we journey into the life of an unsuspecting Victorian brothel worker, a woman with dreams of economic freedom, trapped in a world that feels much colder than your ex's heart after a breakup. Now, before you get too comfy, perhaps in your snug blanket burrito, or that chair that squeaks like a protester at an indie film screening, let's conjure some questions. Have you ever wondered what it's like to lean against a wall, taking a breath so deep that you might accidentally suck in a moth or two? Or have you ever felt like your dignity is tied to a seam that could pop at the slightest cough? What about realizing that your biggest decision of the day is whether to wear lace or cotton? A choice more daunting than picking what to watch on Netflix. All right, settle in, dim the lights. And hey, if you're feeling adventurous, crank the fan up high to create that breezy, authentic Victorian ambience. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1857, where the air is so chilly that your breath looks like a foggy ghost sent to haunt your bank account. You lean back against a solid wall in the dimly lit brothel, feeling quite like a wallflower at a dance party no one asked you to attend. It's a moment of calm amid the whirlwind of skirts, flasks, and hollow footsteps of gentlemen wearing hats that probably cost more than your entire wardrobe. A wardrobe consisting of a few worn layers and a resilient spirit that dreams bigger than the cramped quarters you call home. This particular wall, oh dear listener, is as reliable as your slightly judgmental aunt during the holidays. It bears witness to countless whispered conversations, desperate laughter, and the distant thumps of an accordion played by a musician who may or may not have been drunk on motivational spirits. The paint, once a vibrant hue, has faded as much as your hope of becoming a cat owner, peeling back like the layers of truth in a Victorian penny dreadful. And as you take that deep, grounding breath, let's talk about what you might be inhaling. It's a blend. Imagine the earthy scent of damp wool, the sweet but sour stench of spilled ale, and just a hint of something smoky. reminiscent of the kitchen where someone attempted to make a fine meal but instead conjured a small disaster worthy of a cooking show gone wrong. Good luck blending your way through that aroma cocktail. What's the ambience like? The soft murmur of laughter floats through the air like a teasing spectre, only to be muffled by the damp walls around you. Sometimes the laughter breaks into a chorus of giggles, raucous enough to carry you away on a gentle wave, until reality sweeps in like a familiar friend, reminding you that you do still have bills to pay, even if they're wrapped in ribbons of hope and hard work. In this moment of solitude, you notice the distinct chill creeping in, gnawing at the edges of your blanket like a particularly hungry mouse. Where is a Victorian gal to find a coat that actually keeps her warm, while being fashionable enough to impress clients with questionable hygiene? But of course, practicality hasn't made the guest list to this soiree. It all seems like a fantastical conundrum akin to convincing your cat to leave your laptop alone during Zoom meetings. So, you ponder your life choices with fingers that feel much like frozen sausages, surprisingly resilient, but undeniably awkward. Ever tried to juggle thoughts about your dreams with the overwhelming necessity of making a living? It's like attempting to bake a souffle with a rock for a mixing spoon. High aspirations, but a recipe destined for disaster. The wall beside you stands firm, an unwavering support during times of uncertainty, absorbing your secret hopes and unfulfilled ambitions. You lean into it, almost grateful. Its cold surface offers the same reassurance a good Netflix binge might when the day has sucked away all your joy. Will your dreams ever take flight? Or have they been folded up and crammed into that forgotten pocket of your dress? The one you also use to hide emergency snacks for late-night hunger pangs. Just as you feel your worries begin to subside, you hear the clatter of footsteps in the alley. Not just any footsteps, but an army of gentlemen, each more peculiar than the last, like a collection of mismatched socks squabbling over the last piece of pizza. Does one really need all that flair accompanied by a pronounced stench of bad cologne and desperation? Alas, in your line of work, those are the charming quirks you grow accustomed to like a well-worn pair of shoes. Less about style, and more about fending off blisters. Each sound you hear resonates off the walls, each footfall weaving its own tale, echoing through the ether like a poorly delivered punchline. Who'd have thought? 1 second you're engaging in self-reflection, the next you're a preamble within the spectacle of life outside. There's a beauty in the chaos, a raw absurdity that almost allows you to smile through the frigid air as you prepare to rise from this moment of calm. As you get ready to peel yourself off the solid wall, you can't help but chuckle slightly at the deeply layered history of brothel life. A comedy of mismatched socks and unseen battles. A reminder that amidst the struggles and frustrations, there lies something weirdly beautiful in the absurdities, the vulnerabilities, and the humor of it all. Sleep tight, dear listener, as you float into the embrace of night, fortified by the strength of a woman who knows the power of a wall and the potential for laughter in the most unexpected places. Tomorrow invites more gently humorous encounters. A quirky adventure through the annals of history awaits. Chapter 10. A Chilly Dilemma. Hey guys, welcome back to the shivery realm of Victorian London, where even the air feels like it's contemplating a career in ice sculpture. Tonight, We're about to embark on a journey that's colder than your ex's heart during a holiday breakup. The plight of a Victorian brothel worker on a desperate winter's night. Just imagine a world where even the moon looks a bit too frozen to shine brightly, and the only comfort you have is a rat wrapped in a blanket of uncertainty. Before we snuggle deeper into this icy tale, take a moment to like and subscribe. Only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of whimsical historical nonsense, of course. Now, let's set the scene. How would you cope with a relentless winter chill that sends shivers down your spine like an unexpected text from your high school crush? Can you picture huddling in a drafty room with only a tattered shawl for warmth? Is your idea of a hot meal delicately flipping a pancake in an oven? Because in this world, we might have to redefine hot. Think more along the lines of a human-sized ice cube. All right, let's dim the lights, crank up a fan, and drop you straight into a rooftop brothel on a bleak winter night in 1857. You've just awakened in the most unwelcome icebox this side of the Thames. You look around, but there's not much to see. The chill bites through your layers like a pesky paper cut. The walls are just as cold as you'd expect, and you can hear the faint sounds of muffled laughter filtering from elsewhere, almost like the facade of merriment designed to mask the struggle just beneath the surface. The night air is slightly damp, and you can smell the remnants of ale that didn't quite make it to the barroom floor. Think of it as an olfactory introduction to the charming chaos that is Victorian life. Your stomach growls in protest, louder than a dog chasing a squirrel, reminding you that dinner tonight consisted mostly of despair, probably more filling than bread and a side of dreams. Winter nights in this brothel backdrop feel more like a meat locker than a home, minus the faint whiff of cured ham. Let's talk about hunger for a moment. Ever tried to stave off starvation with nothing but a feeble hunk of stale bread that looks suspiciously like a brick complete with sharp corners? Perhaps in more generous moments, you might have acquired a sliver of butter, if you could find it beneath the oppressive weight of broken dreams and unpayable rents. The kind of hunger that gnaws at you, not unlike your cat when you've forgotten to refill its food bowl. It's the kind of hunger that prompts you to consider whether eating the leather soles of your shoes might be a suitable replacement for dinner. Spoiler alert, it's not. Picture the moment you lean your shivering back against the wall, your only companion on this frigid winter night. This wall is surprisingly patient, absorbing your sighs and the palpable weight of your unfulfilled aspirations, like an ancient therapist, dodging your questions about the meaning of life. It's hard to imagine all the dreams you once cradled, now lost amongst cares that grew more critical than those silly childhood ambitions of owning an orange cat named Mr. Whiskers. Can you feel the chill creeping in, gnawing at you with every breath like a suspicious-looking rat on a mission? With each inhale, you catch a whiff of something unidentifiable, lingering in the air. It's reminiscent of a campfire, if the camp were run by raccoons who had just raided last week's leftovers. If warmth were a tangible thing, you'd pay your last shilling for a delicious cup of it. Instead, you muster the kind of resolve only a Victorian wallflower could, resigned to a life where embracing the absurdity served as a form of comfort. Then, You hear it, a chorus of footsteps, thumping and stumbling through the alley, like a herd of confused sheep trying to recall which one of them forgot to wear shoes. Ah, the gentlemen, those charmingly deluded creatures of the night. Each one flounders into your world, wrapping themselves up in scents that could only be described as desperation cologne, mixed generously with yesterday's regrets. But fear not. This chaotic ensemble figures into your nightly routine just like the rusting hinges on the brothel doors. And isn't it a wonder? In this shadowy realm, the laughter rings through the air like bells announcing the arrival of terrible decisions. The back and forths you hear remind you that even in desperation, laughter holds its place as the currency of survival, just like these well-meaning gentlemen who don't quite realize that their joviality sticks out against the somber reality like a fruitcake at a modern-day holiday feast. This rare moment of reflection fills you with a slight buoyancy. Among the frost you find solace in knowing that everyone is stumbling through the night, navigating this odd dance of survival and absurdity. It's a marvelous orchestration of life in a world where jackets aren't quite warm enough, and laughter holds a warmth steadier than any wool-clad shawl. As the night wraps itself around you like a soggy blanket, we'll leave you here, nestled within the pockets of history, poised between hardship and humor. Drift off, dear listener, knowing that behind every frozen facade lies a world brimming with stories deserving of your warmest dreams. Tomorrow promises a delightful romp through the dense fog of Victorian life, where hilarity finds a way to survive even colder winters. Sleep tight. Chapter 11. The Dance of Delusion. Hey guys, welcome back to the slightly scandalous escapades of Victorian London, where the rooftops are as majestic as the secrets they keep, and where your supper might just be a hunk of stale bread mixed with a side of weary hopes. Tonight we delve into a life so bizarre, it makes modern nutritional labels look positively enticing. The world of a brothel worker, where the gentleman clients float in like lost balloons, seeking adventure and escape, rather than the biting reality of life, or, the usual responsibilities that come with an expansive waistcoat collection. Before we shimmy deeper into this tale of, shall we say, peculiar employment, do remember to like, subscribe, and comment, only if this historical romp tickles your fancy, of course. Now, let's dim the lights, don your finest imaginary corset, and settle in for a toasty evening of curiosity and absurdity. Have you ever wondered what it's like when your job description involves walking a tightrope between laughter and despair? Do you think these gentlemen realize you're the secret keeper of their wildest whims? And would it be a stretch to say they treat you like the emotional support animals of a world that chews them up and spits them out? Just imagine, someone comes to pay you in fancy words, hoping to momentarily swap their humdrum existence for a fantasy crafted from a hurried meal and a hint of perfume. Aren't we all just a bit like that, seeking a life of luxury, while still wrestling with the shock of the electric bill? Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1857, right in the heart of all the luxurious chaos of Victorian London. You blink your eyes and take in the scene. The modest rooftop brothel is roughly the size of a humble shoebox, and far less comfortable than a shoe's average toe-wiggling space. The walls are whispering secrets, if walls could talk, and the air carries an unmistakable blend of perfume, a spritz of desperation mixed with an aftershave that might be described as eau de regret. As you sit up, you're hit with a cold draft from a broken window. a guest who never RSVP'd but somehow made itself at home. You can almost hear the window creak. Welcome to today's disappointment. Can I offer you a chill? Somewhere in the distance, the muffled sounds of laughter echo like faintly played music from an ancient organ. It's joyous yet eerily hollow, reminiscent of a circus performance just a tad off its game. Let's talk about your fellow residents, the gentlemen patrons who strut in like peacocks, adorned with their finest sashes, and the occasional mustard stain. Each of them is here to escape their lives of respectable monotony, cloaked in virtues that would dazzle any Sunday sermon. They want the fantasy of adventure, the naughtiness of intrigue, and let's be honest, a moment where nobody's judging their questionable sock choices. But behind that, slightly cynical yet knowing look in your eyes, lies a reality they don't quite understand. You see, to them you're like a fairy godmother. In fact, you should consider changing your title from brothel worker to magical fantasy curator or emotional support enchantress. You know the routine. They slip through the door, grinning like they've just unraveled the world's greatest mystery. But little do they know, you see their daily lives like a poorly written soap opera. The drama and despair are practically painted on their faces, washed off unsuccessfully at the nearest wash basin, I might add. Can you smell it yet? That delicate bouquet of desperation, mingled with overbearing cologne and perhaps just a hint of last night's steak pie. Each patron parades in with the expectation of dalliance, but unbeknownst to them, you're the maestro conducting this absurd dance of fantasy. You're here to mix charm and wit, creating a potion potent enough to convince them that their lives are devoid of magic, only to serve them a grand illusion, garnished with a squeeze of lemon. With every awkward introduction, there's a sense of theatrical absurdity, almost as if you're a character pulled from a script penned by someone who clearly never visited this reality. One in which lewd conversations and faux gallantry intertwine seamlessly with actual human failures. You hum a tune in your head while smoothing your gown, with thoughts of the world outside lingering in the background like an uninvited guest. Oh, how you've learned that these fine gentlemen don't want to reckon with the cold, hard truths of life. Instead, they long for enchantment, like toddlers seeking a fairy tale bedtime story. Only this tale involves slightly more scandal and less wholesome charm. As you begin the dance of deceitful imagination, you catch the eye of one gentleman who looks like he might have walked off the pages of a doting romantic novel. You know the type, mouth agape, eyes sparkling with naive curiosity. His fantastical pursuits seem effortlessly woven into your existence, like a badly knit scarf. This is the moment you realize, while they are lost in their fantasies, you're the one holding the polygon of their merriment, a geometric fabric of genuine influences and cautiously fortified dreams. Look at you now. You can't help but feel that knowing smile creeping onto your face, while the laughter spirals around you like delightful confetti. In this wild historical ride, you've become an unexpected sage, a small beacon of survival in a world layered in irony and misjudged reverie. So, as you gather your thoughts to embrace the night's myriad encounters, remember this. Laughter sometimes hangs in the air like heavy winter coats, too layered to escape with grace, but stunningly beautiful nonetheless. So rest your curious mind, dear listener, and let your dreams wander into the whimsical world of Victorian fantasies. where charm dances with the slightly absurd, and laughter conceals layers of delicate truths. Tomorrow, we'll continue this charming escapade through an era that has more hidden gems than your average attic. Sleep well. Chapter 12. Stretching Dreams and Economic Schemes. Hey guys, welcome back to your favorite escapades through the veiled corners of Victorian London, where the struggle for comfort is like trying to wrap a balled-up sock in a silk handkerchief, noble but oddly square. Tonight's tale stretches further than your neighbor's nose on a gossiping spree. We'll dive into a day in the life of a brothel worker in 1857, where every stretch of the body mirrors the hidden economic chains that twist tighter than a pretzel at a fancy banquet. Before we unfurl this tapestry of mildly interesting history, do remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Only if you genuinely enjoyed it, of course. If you don't, well, I hear the stars are particularly bright this evening. Now, dim the lights, decorate your imagination with feathers and frills, and sink into your coziest position. Let's ponder. Have you ever wondered what stretching felt like in a world where the ceilings are lower than your self-esteem after checking your bank account? Or what secrets linger in the air like an awkward silence at a family reunion? How about trying to charm a gassy gentleman wrapped in cologne, whose conversations leap from mundane to ludicrous faster than a squirrel on espresso? And can we talk about the allure of rosy cheeks and spirited musings alongside, well, you know, the distinctly unpleasant aroma of stale bread? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1857, nestled in a charming little brothel no bigger than a shoebox, where dreams yearn for a breath of fresh air, and reality decides it's more comfortable squashed in like an overripe banana. Take a moment and stretch toward the low ceiling, letting your arms rise like the good intentions of a Sunday sermon. Ah, sweet release. Each muscle loosens in a way that resembles a toddler emerging from a long nap. Delightful, but maybe a tad uncoordinated. As the morning sunlight filters begrudgingly through the grime-coated window panes, you can feel the chill seeping through. It's an unwelcome reminder that even after a good stretch, warmth is a luxury better suited for tea parties than early risers. But today, we stretch past the physical pain and into the rich tapestry of your life. A life painted with shades of whimsy, melancholy, and just a spritz of societal bewilderment. Let's talk about your routine, shall we? There's something beautifully absurd about forgiving the dread of daily rituals. You tiptoe toward the window, its gnarled frame complaining like your uncle post-Thanksgiving dinner, and peek out at the bustling streets. Somewhere beneath the cobblestones lies a cavalcade of life, where horse-drawn carriages teeter about like drunk friends at a wedding, and the occasional lost pigeon flops into the parade like a confused party crasher. With every stretch, your mind flits through familiar faces, jovial patrons who carry the secret weight of their own tangled lives, like two slick mustaches that fail to distract from the awkward truth. You know, the gentlemen who crave adventure yet rely on your whimsical charm to step into the world beyond those modest walls. It's like being the only lifeguard at a pool filled with ducks. They quack for fun, but you're the one keeping them afloat. Today, you're on a mission. Let's see how to charm the roses from the noses of these old chaps before it turns into something resembling a pantomime. But first, you need to prepare. A layer of fragrance, tinged with talcum powder and hope, clings to your skin, like an eager puppy seeking affection. Ah, the paradox of a charming facade, hiding the rather mundane dealing of dreams and despair. Like icing on a fruitcake that no one actually wants at the party. Perhaps you notice how small changes can impact your day. This morning, an unexpected gurgle from your stomach reminds you of last night's indulgences. An artisan bread roll, nudged aside, while you savoured the last morsel of beef stew. Oh, the glories of low-budget feasting. As you head down the worn stairs, each step creaking beneath your ambition, you muse about how daily outings for bread, for mere pennies, could make more of an impression than an entire theatrical performance. Once you step into the main room, you're swept away by the familiar soundscape, a mix of muffled laughter, slapping card games, and, oddly enough, the occasional shout from a neighbour arguing with their laundry. Is that really the interlude to the grand tale you're about to weave? You can't help but chuckle inwardly. Seriously, is pub brawl a theatrical art form we've overlooked? Now each moment stretches before you like a canvas, waiting to be adorned with characters and colour. As your first visitor wanders in, you see the desperate sparkle in his eyes, as if he's just spotted a penny in a fountain and decided that today was destined for greatness. He approaches with the regal confidence of a scholar, but carries the fragrance of something suspiciously reminiscent of last week's fish market. Ah, the poetic ironies of a brothel worker, a ballet of balancing charm with aromatic misadventures. With every laugh and flutter of your fan, you sense the delightful absurdity of this venture. Between stretching limbs and shuffling bills, you're not just a character in this absurd drama, but the unlikely author of your own well-crafted exploits. So relax, dear listener, as you melt into dreams of Victorian charm and peculiar hilarity, where humour dances through the air like confetti caught in the budding hopes for tomorrow. When you wake, remember, each stretch is a chance to embrace new narratives. After all, you're the scribe of your very own whimsical tale in this delightful shenanigan called life. Chapter 13. Nightgowns and Economic Frowns. Hey guys, welcome back as we dive beneath the frayed hems of Victorian London's swirling skirts, where the air is thick with secrets, and if you squint just right, you can almost discern the difference between a patron's cologne and yesterday's fish market. Tonight we unfurl the worn fabric of a brothel worker's life in 1857, where the fabric of society is stitched together with more than just thread. Think economic chains tighter than a corset on a Sunday. Before we sink into our pillows of whimsy, remember to like, subscribe, and comment if this tickles your fancy, because nothing says I appreciate your nightly humor about historical misfortunes like a gentle tap on the screen. If you didn't enjoy it, well, there's always a lovely garden shed out back where you can ponder the mysteries of life in silence. Now, let's embrace this delightful absurdity. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to wake up in a nightgown that feels more suited for a very boring ghost rather than a charming Victorian lady? Or wondered what economic chains feel like when wrapped around your waist, competing for space with your increasingly ambitious dreams? And what of the gentlemen who stroll in expecting charm while being one cologne fragrance away from a direct encounter with a skunk? Congratulations, you've just emerged from the comfortable fog of sleep into 1857, nestled unceremoniously in a quaint, dimly lit chamber of a brothel. The walls might be less than welcoming, sporting an assortment of questionable stains and decor that screams, "What was I thinking?" You lie there, contemplating the fascinating choice between a simple, worn night dress and the dark blue, well-mended day dress that tugs at the edges of the wardrobe, begging for daylight. First order of business, dressing like a heroine instead of a specter. As you slip into that light cotton nightgown, more fragile than the emotional stability of a soap opera character, you can't help but chuckle at the irony. You're a working woman, dressed for a soothing evening of sleep, yet preparing to face the day with the grace of a hippo on roller skates. That day dress? It's your ticket to blending in with the masses, looking as ordinary as a loaf of bread on a baker's shelf. Now, let's talk about the feeling of those garments. The light cotton flutters around you like a persistent mosquito, while the wool day dress wraps you tightly, reminding you even more fiercely that, yes, your dietary choices from last night are still having consequences. The pressure snug against your waist offers both a sense of duty and the slight anxiety of a math exam you didn't study for. Never fun. You pulled the day dress over your head with the grace of a statue trying to escape its pedestal. This, dear listener, is where the fun begins. Stepping into the bustling chaos of your routine, every corner echoes with a symphony of sounds. The creaking floorboards sing your morning anthem, while noisy patrons and their equally expressive pastimes create a cacophony of life. You glance out of the small, grime-coated window, where you see today's patrons approaching the door like bees to honey, each more peculiar than the last. One gentleman sways as he walks. Was that enough gin to sink a ship, or just a little too much cheese? Ah, the delightful uncertainty. As you move about the room, the morning light flickers through the dusty panes. The scent of stale bread lingers in your nostrils, intertwining with the odor of overripe expectations. For every hearty breakfast you missed in your own life, there's a bill that needs paying like an angry friend demanding a split at lunch. Irony, after all, has a way of keeping you on your toes, unlike those boots which, heaven forbid, pinch your toes like a cranky landlord at renewal time. Now the most pressing question arises. Is it truly worth sacrificing comfort for societal appearances? Clad in day dresses that make you feel like one slip away from a runaway horse, you venture downstairs. The creaking wood beneath your feet sings the ballad of those who've treaded these boards before you, all while you contemplate whether to lead your own theatrical performance or simply resign to marginally established chaos. Finally, you receive your audience for the day, gents who wander in like lost puppies, desperately seeking adventure, but more often than not finding disappointment on a scale previously unseen. You take a moment to perfect your poise, shoulders back as if there's a potential award for Best Supporting Actress in a Surreal Comedy. With every awkward question about the weather, you smile, the room surrounding you buzzing with anticipation, and the genuine hope that today, just maybe, will lead to something mildly more acceptable than yesterday. And yet, through the swirling pages of this economic tale, you realize that every encounter is a dance, a waltz that's just one misstep away from catastrophic laughter. Or is it more of a two-stepping skirmish? Ah, either way, it's sure to leave an impression. You stand there, keenly aware that your charm could easily mask the reality behind the curtain. But that's the true art of it all, isn't it? As the faint sounds of laughter and the rustle of coins drift through the halls, you settle in for another day of captivating absurdity amid the hidden economic chains of existence. Here, amid the frayed edges of laughter, dry wit, and a sprinkle of old-world charm, life unfolds in splendid absurdity, just waiting for tomorrow to reappear with a new set of eccentricities. Remember, dear listener, that every inhalation of this wildly interwoven reality tickles your senses. You are the unwitting protagonist of a historical comedy, and tomorrow will be just another page in this delightful ledger of life, where costumes, charm, and laughter dance hand in hand like two old friends needing provisions for their laughter-filled journey. Chapter 14. A Brisk Walk on the Shadowy Side. Hey guys, welcome back to another night's exploration. Tonight, we take a detour through the crammed alleys and back streets of Victorian London, the sort of place where you wouldn't want to accidentally bump into your ex while holding a cabbage. Seriously, cabbage could be considered a romantic gesture if you squint hard enough and overlook the smell. But alas, as you curl up to the romanticism of history, prepare yourself. This evening's adventure is shadowier than a cat in a coal cellar. Picture this. You've just stepped outside a cozy brothel, a veritable historical curiosity that could use some serious sprucing, maybe a fresh coat of paint, or an entire architectural redesign. Tonight, the air is thick with mystery, swirling around you like thoughts of that last unreturned phone call, while the distant echo of a banjo fight competes with your sanity. But before you drift away into this absurd yet captivating world, do a small favor for me. If you find joy in our nightly jaunts through history, like a sense of bewilderment that one might compare to biting into a slightly stale croissant, give a gentle tap to that like button. Subscribe for more of this delightful nonsense, and feel free to comment your thoughts. Unless, of course, you're planning to write an angry diatribe about how history should be without humor, in which case I'll direct you back to the garden shed. Plenty of pondering goes on there. Now, imagine you're nestled comfortably in the shadows of a street corner in 1857. The soft glow of gas lamps flickers like the last flickering hope of a motivational speaker in a room full of uninterested cats. As you lean against the cool stone wall, sipping a metaphorical cup of tea that tastes slightly off, is that Earl Grey or just regret? Observe a discreet figure in a long overcoat approach, a police officer known locally as a peeler, because apparently they were the only ones wearing an actual uniform that didn't resemble something your grandma wore to church. Here's where the real charm of the Victorian experience begins. This officer glides through the shadows with the grace of a pigeon on Valium, occasionally lifting a hand in silent acknowledgement to the unspoken transactions taking place. Yes, that's right. You've just witnessed the art of a small unspoken bribe being passed. You can almost hear the subtext echo through the cobblestones. I might be the law, but even I have my price. And what would that enigmatic price be? A pint of ale? A seat at the table? Or perhaps just enough to pretend the fish market doesn't smell like yesterday's choices taken too far? The unspoken arrangement speaks volumes about the discretion needed in such establishments. The brothel workers, bless their souls, navigated this dance of society with a finesse that would make a ballerina envious. Ever wonder if they wore tap shoes under those petticoats for a little extra rhythm? While the police officer moves along, it's enlightening to realize that clandestine alliances, like poorly executed magic tricks, are the true currency on these shadowy corners. Again, you stand there, absorbing the ambience, the sharp scent of coal smoke in the air, mingling uncomfortably with the lingering aromas from the brothel, a heady mix that could be bottled as ode to desperation. As evening deepens, the murmurs of laughter and much less innocent chuckles spill out from the brothel entrance. It is as if each light that flickers in the window flickers not just with the flame, but with promise. A little too much promise, if you catch my drift. Can you imagine what it would be like to turn your back on a dull brick wall and approach that small leap of faith? Perhaps you'd want to ask the workers about their day jobs. So, Nancy, how's the weather over there among the clients? You'd chuckle, as they reply with a wry grin about the recent influx of tourists, who clearly think Victorian is another way to say spend all night making poor life choices. As the clock ticks forward and shadows cloak this peculiar playground, you find yourself pondering wider questions, like, were the gentlemen who wandered through these doors truly out for more than just an evening of companionship? How awkward were the introductions? Hello, would you like to discuss the weather or my questionable life choices first? Gradually the night deepens and the vibrancy swells, creating a fantastic mosaic of sounds and scents that is delightfully overwhelming. Here, every chuckle and every conspiratorial whisper becomes part of the tapestry that shapes the lives and economic chains of those hidden workers. If only you could bottle the essence of all this absurdity, to share with future generations the true meaning of doing what you must to get by. So, as you lean against the cobblestones, surrounded by this melange of wonder, chaos, and just a hint of scandal, remember that every life lived has its chains, visible or invisible. In these shadows, where laughter floats like confetti in the night air, you've entered a world where history and hilarity intertwine more closely than a Victorian fan and the very brisk wind of change. You can't make this up, but then again, history often writes the best comedy. And as the night unfolds in further curious ways, remember, not all adventures come wrapped in a bow. Some just emerge through the alleyways and streets, ready to draw you deeper into the wonderfully odd world that is Victorian London. Chapter 15. The Smith Who Came and Went. Hey guys, welcome back to another night of curious escapades through history's peculiarest corners. Tonight, we plunge into a storyline that's as fleeting as your aunt's enthusiasm for digital technology. An anonymous encounter with a man known only as Smith. He pops in faster than a microwave burrito. Here 1 second, poof, gone the next, and not even a decent wave goodbye. Imagine the Victorian sensation of the evening being more like a surprise pop quiz than a leisurely stroll around the park. You know, the kind where you hope you don't roll your eyes and unintentionally highlight the fact that you've only been practicing your smize for the last 10 minutes in front of a candlelit mirror. If anything sounds more absurd than that, well, my friends, you're about to discover it here tonight. Before we dive headfirst into the bustling chaos of this brothel encounter, do me a favor. If you enjoy listening to mildly interesting history, similar to how one enjoys slightly soggy cereal, hit that like button subscribe for more whimsical wanderings, and please leave a comment if you feel like joining our fantastical soiree, or if you've simply got a burning desire to rant about how humankind consistently mispronounces quinoa. Now, let's dim the lights a tad, maybe sprinkle a bit of imaginary fairy dust in the air, and slide into a comfortably awkward moment that could rival even the most cringe-worthy reunion. You know how it goes. Hi, I'm Smith. Nice to meet you. Please don't look me in the eye. Congrats. You've just woken up in 1857, the year when top hats were still very much a thing, and folks had taken an impressive 30-year emotional detour since Shakespeare's last performance. Around here, the instructions for social interactions are straightforward. Avoid eye contact, keep your chin up, and sprinkle a bit of charm to hide what could go awry behind your own facade. Think of it as Tinder, but less swiping and more strategic negotiations over the price of a pint. Let's talk about the brothel where our story begins. The air is thick with possibilities, both fragrant and, let's be honest, a little less savory. Imagine stepping inside a space that's warmer than a poorly ventilated sauna, but with a hint of something else, something a bit more questionable. Perhaps it's a bouquet that can only be described as eau de desperation with a hint of regret. It's like stepping into a perfume store where every scent has a backstory, and most of those stories could get you grounded for at least 2 decades. Now, picture the moment when Smith arrives. He walks in, his shoes squeaking like they have something to say, probably, "Good luck finding a place to rest your eyebrows." The man seems far more engaged with the wallpaper than with any actual interaction. Why? Because who needs meaningful conversations when there are unspoken arrangements to navigate? Isn't it fascinating how certain aspects of human behavior remain unchanged? I mean, Smith has created the ultimate version of social distancing long before it was a health guideline. You could almost hear him mulling over what he would order if he was on a menu. A side of avoidance with a slice of anonymity, please. Immediate transactions have never felt so awkward. Looking out from behind a curtain, essentially the world's most draped shade, this clandestine business is no casual chat across a cafe table. It's all a grand ballet, with every gesture conveying as much meaning as a Shakespearean play performed entirely in interpretive dance. Very flowy, lots of confusion, and certainly not for the easily offended. How do these interactions look from a modern perspective? It's like showing up to a pizza place only to realize you're allergic to gluten, only to find your dining partner is debating whether pineapple belongs on pizza. Meanwhile, Smith fumbles through coins with more urgency than a toddler desperately attempting to trade for goldfish crackers. It's all high stakes, punctuated only by muffled giggles from the other side of the parlor. Quite charming in its own chaotic way. As your mind wanders, it leads you to ponder. What is even happening in the minds of both parties? Is Smith evaluating his options, weighing out karma points for the rest of his week? Sure, I could have a slightly awkward evening, or go home and dip my face in a bowl of mashed potatoes. Decisions, decisions. Funny how the distance feels the same today. We still may meet someone at a bar, avoid an awkward conversation, and then hurry off into anonymity, all in the pursuit of avoiding the eye contact that screams, "We are not having an option for dessert, are we?" Before long, Smith has grabbed what he came for. Perhaps companionship, perhaps just a momentary break from reality. Then he's gone in a flash. Just like that, he's out into the night, vanishing into the fog like a magician, with all the flair of a middle-aged dad trying to remember where he parked the car. Poof. And you're left standing there in the brothel, pondering what just occurred, and if you should complain to someone about the clattering of your own heart over that brief exchange. And what a moment that could be. As the door clicks shut, his absence mingles with the unsettling odor of desperation still wafting in the air. A reminder that life is one long series of short interactions that don't all require deep farewells. You can't make this up. But history certainly does make a habit of laughing at us in the process. So as you chuckle at the surreal nature of these transactions, let's keep a twinkle in our eye for the next curious encounter that Victorian life surely has in store. For tonight, the dance continues. And who knows what other whimsical characters might waltz through these shadowy holes again. Chapter 16. The Morning Sounds of Great Expectations. Hey guys, welcome back to another night of mildly exciting forays into the peculiar playground of history. Tonight we venture into an era filled with melodrama and obscure economic constraints that might send shivers down your spine. Though honestly, that's probably just the drafty Victorian architecture. It's the sort of period where you could open a window and suddenly host every stray cat and its third cousin because, let's be real, nobody cared about double glazing back then. As we set the stage, picture this. A morning in 1857. The year when the world was collectively trying to decide if they should wear top hats or bowlers, much like your great-uncle trying to choose between socks with sandals or camo cargo shorts. You hear children shrieking outside, their laughter breaking the drowsy silence like a sudden sneeze in a quiet library. A dog is barking, perhaps questioning the whole concept of morning itself, while the street vendor's melodious call floats through the air, triumphantly declaring, "Knives to grind." Imagine waking up to that legit herald of hope, or perhaps an absurd reminder that you really need to listen to your barber about that mullet you thought was making a comeback. But let's be honest. What's a Victorian morning without a pinch of existential dread? As you rub the sleep from your eyes, you might find yourself pondering questions about life that are only slightly more important than, did I leave the oven on? Such as, what were the working conditions for a brothel worker? Or, is it possible to earn a living wage while peddling your wares in a damp alley? You know, deep thoughts over coffee. As you lean back, shifting into the fluffiness of your current historical escapade, let me ask, what are the odds that any male patrons remember to tip? And what's the immediate post-morning routine? It's got to be more complicated than your attempts at making sourdough during a Pinterest binge. You're about to discover that behind the colourful facade and frilly lace of our brothel workers' life, there's an economic tapestry woven tighter than a grandmother's hug after being apart for the holidays. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1857. where the sound of children laughing could very well be the last joyful sound you hear before the day becomes an awkward game of price negotiations. The air has that charming musk of wood smoke, mingling with the acrid scent of, let's call it mystery. The kind that makes you wonder when mystery meat actually became a thing. You're in the heart of Victorian London, an urban jungle where even the pigeons look slightly apologetic for existing. The streets buzz with vendors hawking everything from fresh-baked bread to dubious medicinal elixirs. One particular street vendor is calling out, "Knives to grind," with the enthusiasm of a caffeinated squirrel, an oddly fitting soundtrack to your life decisions today. As you stand by a window, the sunlight peeking through layers of over-decorated curtains that are doing their best impression of a Victorian lighthouse, it suddenly dawns on you that brothel workers, much like you on a Monday morning before coffee, have a rough job. Except instead of, "Can I help you with that?" there's a whole lot of, "Should I really have worn those boots?" Imagine pouring out your morning tea while contemplating the daily grind, quite literally. You'd be navigating a world where the only thing scarier than the economy is what just rolled off the kitchen floor. The room you're in might smell like eau de desperation, a complex blend of hope and soiled linens, with just a hint of regret lingering in the corners, like an ex who won't stop popping back into your life during family gatherings. It's difficult to fathom the conversations that must take place. Perhaps a typical morning begins with a quiet exchange like, "Good morning, my dear. What are today's rates? Would you take a few pence?" and a nod of approval from the gentleman across the street? Or just for a moment of eye contact? Decisions, decisions, indeed. The local economics of brothel work could serve as a case study for a class on universally awkward encounters, illustrating the very real moment of realization that maybe happiness doesn't always come for free, even when you're excited about receiving coins for your time. Outside, the noises of commercial life clash with those of domestic duties, creating a symphony so chaotic it could win awards at the rural county fair. Dogs bark, children yell, and the vendors sing their jingles like they're auditioning for a Broadway show. You could bet money that one vendor even sings in the style of the latest opera, surely with a bit too much enthusiasm about providing everyone's newest kitchen knives. Because nothing says domestic bliss like a new blade while negotiating your pricing on companionship. A knock disrupts your contemplation, and you realize the day has officially begun. Servants hurriedly dash about, delivering messages, serving tea, and juggling wildly between courtly mannerisms and a semblance of order in what's bound to be a chaotic day. It's like a live rendition of a Shakespearean comedy. There's slight chaos, awkwardness, and high stakes because remember, they're navigating a world packed with questions and even more dramatic stakes. Much like any dating app story you've ever heard. Amidst the clutter, the shrieks of children blend into a cacophony of sounds, echoes of life, laughter, and yes, even the occasional scuffle over who gets the last biscuit. Ah, the resilience of humanity. You settle into the soothing chaos, feeling comforted by the shared absurdity that life throws your way. You realize, in the simplest of joys, or perhaps the most ludicrous misunderstandings, every London morning is both a burden and a blessing. As your world unwinds, you're in for a delightful day of hilarity and unexplained economic circumstances, or at the very least, a kick of comedic relief amidst life's many conundrums. Whatever it is, rest assured, today promises to be another chapter of mildly interesting history, filled with something more ridiculous than your last family dinner. Chapter 17, A Day in the Life of a Victorian Brothel Worker. Imagine, if you will, waking up to the gentle light of 1857, peeking through your tattered curtains. You roll over, squinting at the alarm clock that doesn't exist, realizing today isn't going to be a walk in the park, but rather a scramble through a field filled with roses and a hefty number of thorns. In fact, scratch that. Today feels more like a triathlon, where the first event is convincing patrons that yes, your questionable living arrangements are part of a charming, albeit grim, fairy tale. Now let's talk about this life. A life spent behind those very lace curtains. You might find yourself pouring a cup of tea that was brewed with water so questionable it deserves its own cautionary label. The air is thick, not just with the scent of yesterday's scandalous dealings, but also with the kind of hope that feels a bit like clinging to a fading memory of how it used to be, before you started trading your dignity for a slice of economic survival. Picture that, like deciding to use expired milk in your coffee just to save a bit of cash. Oh, the irony of living your day-to-day in a place where the normal sounds of life, children playing, dogs barking, vendors hawking knives, bleed together like an awkwardly mismatched playlist on your favorite streaming service. You, standing at that proverbial crossroads of life, find it rather fascinating how the world outside your ever-scandalous abode feels so vibrant. Yet your little corner pulses with the melancholy of survival. It's like watching your neighbor's kids play outside, while you're stuck trying to decide whether you can convince that one gentleman who brewed a questionable mustache to return your lost shoe from last week. Just look at you, as you wipe the sleep from your eyes, preparing for a day that feels more chaotic than an endless scroll through a social media feed filled with influencers selling biodegradable cutlery. You're a casualty of your own livelihood, reflecting on the oddity of it all, drifting through existence like a badly timed pun in a friend's comedic monologue. The brothel isn't just a workplace. It's a stage on which the absurd play of humanity unfolds every day. And let's not forget the clients. Depending on the day, they might range from the well-dressed gentleman with the demeanor of a squirrel in need of a nut, agitated and overly caffeinated, to the earnest farmer who thinks a good crop rotation can solve everything, including your pricing. This delightful rotation of lords, tradesmen, and decidedly quirky townsfolk sets the backdrop for your every endeavor, shaping your journey like the unfortunate seams of a poorly tailored gown. As you navigate the morning, you can almost feel the weight of history like a thick fog swirling around you, suffocating but oddly comforting. The threadbare cushions on your rickety sofa whisper secrets of transactions past, while the echo of laughter filters in through the open window, mixing with the harsh and often comical reality that surrounds you. You find yourself asking, how does one maintain dignity amidst a backdrop that even the bravest of poets would hesitate to describe? An existential question, to be sure, much more fulfilling than pondering your last few choices in footwear. You might encounter your fellow workers, each battling their own stormy seas of economic disparity. There's Clara, for instance, who claims she'll not only sell her soul, but will also give you a discount. An offer that leaves you chuckling in disbelief, not entirely sure if she's half serious or simply trying to brighten another dreary day. On this day, you might trade stories as easily as currency, digesting laughter the way you consume stale bread, as a necessary sustenance for emotional survival. Let's talk about attire. Your wardrobe is a mix between enticing and I'm just here to survive. It's akin to flipping through your closet while thinking, will any of these awkward blouses impress? Or perhaps sell me into yet another scheme involving dubious fortune tellers and less than livable arrangements. The fabric, fraying at the edges, clings uncomfortably, reminding you that while your exterior may send signals of allure, your internal calculation strategy is rife with hurdles you never signed up for. Sooner than you'd like, the clock ticks on. If your day were a play, the time would call for the next act, or a desperate piggyback ride on the latest economic trends. Maybe you'll break the ice and play the distinctly Victorian game of mercantile chat, tossing around quips about the cost of sugar just as readily as you'd discuss the weather, or weathering judgment. Now, roads are bustling outside your window with those seeking company, both in laughter and affection. But don't think of it as anything less than a madcap circus where the clowns have made questionable life choices. One might easily fall into a reverie, contemplating why juggling knives seems far more entertaining than the reality outside. Yet those jesters, masked in their own echo of histories gone wrong, often seek some mirth within your quarters, cementing your role not merely as a worker, but a reluctant therapist. So here you are, amid the chorus of absurdity and profit margins, holding your ground and your humor like an umbrella during a perpetual drizzle of dissatisfaction. Every moment is laden with the comedic richness of life itself. And just like the vendors outside, you are peddling your share of existence in a world that constantly threatens to surprise you. If only you could figure out who commissioned that last delivery of dodgy tea. And as you prepare to step out for the day, it's clear that every giggle, sigh, and lingering chime of the pocket watch marks another convoluted chapter in your rollicking existence, one woven intricately with mischief, survival, and the ever-entertaining absurdity of being. Chapter 18. The Seaside Dreams of a Victorian Brothel Worker. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a world that's as far removed from your cozy beds as a Victorian gentleman is from good hygiene. Welcome to 1857, the scent of roast rabbit hanging thick in the air like a bad cologne. Just imagine, you're lying in bed, rumpled sheets clinging to you like that one friend who won't take the hint and leave the party. It's a time when the best accessory was a parasol, not the latest smartphone. And your morning routine involved more existential dread than skincare. Before we embark on this slightly damp voyage, I kindly invite you, but only if you actually enjoy this, to like, subscribe, and drop a comment about your favorite wet dog scent, because who doesn't love that? Now, grab a blanket, dim the lights, adjust your fan so it strategically covers the smell of last night's questionable takeout, and let's set sail into the port of absurdity. Have you ever wondered what it's like to wake up in a brothel and be told it's going to be another splendidly chaotic day? Or maybe you've pondered if the floor is actually cleaner than the last two gents who trod across it. And what's the deal with dreams of escaping to the seaside? Surely it's the Victorian equivalent of scrolling through a travel blog while clutching a slice of bread. Well, worry not, dear friend. You're about to uncover all this and more. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1857 London, where the air is thick with ambition, unwashed bodies, and, oddly enough, the hope of a day by the coast. Your roommate, Lily, stretches her arms above her head, yawning like a contented cat, her eyes sparkling with that all-too evocative longing for sea spray and sun-soaked laughter. A frivolous daydream compared to the humdrum reality of your grimy apartment. Wouldn't it be grand, she muses, her voice dripping with wistfulness, to toss off our corsets and set forth upon the waves? Imagine it, a seaside escape filled with seagulls squawking as if they've just heard the worst joke of all time. Just us and the sand, dear friend, sizzling in the sun like two slugs left too long on the windowsill. You can't help but chuckle at her metaphors as they capture the whimsical essence of Victorian escapism. The sea, that elusive blue wonderland, beckons like a flailing arm trying to paddle through a sea of drudgery. Meanwhile, your mind drifts back to the notion that a life spent by the seaside might involve fewer scurrying feet pacing the floor in search of, shall we say, companionship. Imagine waking up to the sound of waves crashing instead of the ominous creak of the floorboards under the weight of yet another stag party gone rogue. What a dream. It's the sort of escape that tempts you like a half-eaten crumpet left on a plate, inexorably luring you closer, even if you know it's going to turn into a life lesson in disappointment. But alas, you're not at the seaside. You're languishing in a Victorian room whose wallpaper seems as desperate for fresh air as you are. Lily's visions of the beach might as well be fantasy novels, the kind where mermaids braid each other's hair while reconsidering their life choices. As you rub your eyes, the scent of poorly brewed tea wafts in from the kitchen, mingling with the whiff of what appears to be last week's stew fighting for survival against an army of mold. The kitchen is a battleground of culinary catastrophe. You've come to terms with this. Even your loaves of bread are playing hide and seek like wayward children, only to be found rock hard and undiscussed, leading you to question why you thought it would be a good idea to save another penny. Will you be wheeling and dealing like a true Victorian entrepreneur? Nah, you're just managing to stay awake between shifts and wonder if it's too late to join a traveling circus. As you both sip your increasingly cold tea, an absurd ritual that serves as breakfast to you both. Lily leans in conspiratorially. What if we snuck away? Oh, just imagine it. Our toes digging into the sand. Perhaps a scandalous dance with a fisherman named Barnacle Bill. If he smells anything like this tea, we may have to settle for a scandalous conversation instead. Sure, why not? You can already envision your collective transformation into sun-kissed deities, running away from a life filled with crumbling dreams. Life by the beach, where instead of dodging unwelcome affirmations of your professional choices, you could be dodging wave splashes and an occasional overly friendly clam. Of course, reality, much like the last dish you washed, sneaks up on you. Staying hopeful, however, you join Lily in brainstorming how to hustle a few extra coins at the brothel later on, despite all odds. After all, each sale is just a ticket to your grand escape, until Barnacle Bill comes around, begging for his own idea of fun amongst the shoreline chatter. So here you stand, between joy and absurdity, sandcastles and seaweeds of realities colliding. Every flutter of hope towards the seaside feels like building a glorious sandcastle equipped with turrets, until the tide inevitably rolls in and takes it all away. But wouldn't it be a delightful struggle worth living through? And thus, as you gather the courage to face another day, you can't help but wonder, who needs the sea when you've got laughter, absurd dreams, and an ever-expanding inventory of questionable decisions? The sun may rise, the waves may remain elusive, but your wit, that's the ultimate escape in this topsy-turvy tale of existence. Chapter 19. A Day at the Beach and the Grim Reality of Grime. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're slipping into something more comfy than a pair of Victorian trousers. An escapade to Brighton in 1857, where the sand is less gritty than your average London street, and the sea breeze is an extravagant treat for your senses. Now, before we plunge headfirst into the salty seafoam of yesteryears, I implore you to like, subscribe, and share the whimsical thoughts that dance through your mind, but only if you actually enjoy this. Let's get cozy. Dim those lights. Unleash the gentle whir of a fan, and snuggle into your pillows like the marshmallow you were destined to be. Tonight, we're about to explore the joyful escapism of a Victorian brothel worker's childhood memory. The rare and fleeting moments of laughter amidst the dusty gloom of daily life. Have you ever wondered if the ocean would make you less anxious about your choices? Or if sand between your toes could somehow erase the memories of dodgy encounters with less than hygienic gents? What if you woke up thinking today was going to be a waterfront extravaganza, only to be slapped back into reality by the nightly raucousness of your flatmates? It begs the question, do seagulls squawk less at the beach than in your backyard? Or is there an unspoken competition between the birds and the neighborhood cats? Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1857 Brighton, where the morning sun glints off the frothy waves, promising a day of fun that feels more like a fairy tale and less like a Victorian-era tragedy. Your heart flutters like a poorly secured flap on a picnic basket as you slip out of your sleep-worn, ruffled sheets. An aesthetic choice that screams, "I survived last night," instead of, "Good morning." Imagine the sounds. The gentle lapping of waves against the pebbled shore, like a soothing chorus inviting you to join their club. The salty sea air fills your lungs, competing with the pungent memories of last week's boiled cabbage. Oh, the choices we make. As you stride towards the beach, it hits you. The scent of hot, sugary pastries twisting in the breeze, mingling with the faint, hesitant razzle-dazzle of seagull droppings nearby. Why live with the regret of not indulging? You recall that time years ago when you visited Brighton for a family outing, that rare moment where joy felt like a well-earned summer vacation, not just another fog-laden Tuesday in London. The day was so bright it practically shouted, "Let's get sand in our shoes and laugh about it." Dusting off the cobwebs of memory, you fancy the chaos of your siblings scampering towards the shore, shrieking with delight as they chased waves like they were fleeing their own responsibilities. If only that excitement didn't feel like it was fading faster than a sandcastle against the relentless tide. A memory unfolds vividly. The sight of your father wrestling with an oversized beach umbrella, struggling like a man trying to tame a particularly rebellious octopus. "There's no way this can be more complicated than the art of sonnet writing," he exclaims, though the wind doesn't appear to share his optimism. Meanwhile, your mother clutches her sunbonnet like a lifebuoy, attempting to salvage the day from the clutches of disaster, all while balancing a picnic basket that seems to threaten to unravel at any moment. As the ocean embraces your toes, you feel a tingle of nostalgia mixed with a hint of mirth. It's so picturesque that you almost forget the grimy London reality waiting for you. Just then, a mischief maker known as a seagull swoops in, keenly aware that your cotton candy isn't safe. It's as if the bird just got off the Victorian version of a reality show. Survivor, Brighton edition. You watch, entranced, as it snatches your sugary treat and vanishes into the sky. It's a heist that would make even the most seasoned pickpocket proud. You shake your head, giggling at this urban wildlife. A bit like your family, really. There's definitely a case of survival of the fittest going on. After all, what's a day at the beach without your siblings plotting to drown one another in the shallows, and your parents arguing about the proper way to construct a beach fort? How deliciously absurd. It's a blend of hilarity and chaos fitting for a comedy. One big happy mess. A stark contrast to the cramped apartment you share back in London. Between negotiating bill payments and avoiding awkward conversations about where the business really happens, such memories feel like a vacation brochure you find stuffed beneath your mattress. Come to Brighton, the brochure might say, where sand is temporary, but laughter can last a lifetime, unless you're ambushed by a wayward seagull. As the hours roll on, and you build sandcastles that inevitably become the galley of tragedy, only to be stomped on by the next wave, you realize this moment is fleeting as the tide. You return to the unease of reality, a metaphorical beach towel being yanked from under you, reminding you that adulthood can be as relentless as the ocean's pull. But before you head back into the fray of life's gritty whims, you grasp those sweet memories like seashells. Perhaps they can serve as tiny anchors in this vast ocean of challenges. The sun dips low, casting a golden hue over Brighton, and you saunter back, wondering about the next adventure, the kind that's less about getting sideswiped by waves and more about embracing the absurdity of life. So here's to the journeys, a little bit sandy, a little bit soggy, and all the more worth it. As you drift into the fabric of your present, you chuckle softly, allowing a sliver of that joy to ride home with you amid the unrelenting waves of life's demands. Chapter 20. The Secret Stash of Dreams. Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of Historical Hilarity, where we explore topics more fascinating than a cat stuck in a Victorian bonnet. Tonight, we take a stroll down an alley darker than your neighbor's sense of humor, a peek into the world of a Victorian brothel worker in 1857. Just imagine, this was a time when hygiene meant scrubbing with less than convincing soap made from who knows what. Now, before we climb into the rabbit hole of scandals and ungodly hours, I need you to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts below. But only if you actually enjoy this, because, let's be real, we're not here to bore you to sleep. We're here to whisk you away to a world of historical charm, or at least to a place where the lack of charm has a comedic edge. So, let's dim those lights, turn on a soothing fan, and settle into your pillows like a well-worn sock at the bottom of the laundry basket. Take a deep breath and consider this. Have you ever wondered how difficult it is to stash your pennies when your roommate keeps eyeing your jar like it's a piñata? Or perhaps you've thought that saving for a rainy day is as mythical as finding a unicorn in your backyard. Imagine waking up in 1857, surrounded by more secrets than a magician's hat. Congratulations! You've just risen and shined in the lavishly cramped quarters of a Victorian brothel. The early morning light scuttles across slightly stained wallpaper, illuminating the corners where mischief and dreams intersect. Let's take a moment to talk about your secret stash of coins. Imagine the optimistic clinking of small change, like sweet whispers of hope tucked beneath the floorboard or ensconced in the fraying hems of your apron. Oh yes, in this world, those coins are like dreams waiting to burst forth, bigger than a peacock at a pigeon convention. Your heart races at the thought of salvaging just enough to make a glorious escape, as if you're a character in a romantic comedy rather than the star of a historical drama. Is today the day I find my freedom? You ponder, while looking through 3 different choices of slightly dusty knickknacks. If only there were a how-to guide titled Financial Freedom for Dummies, hidden in a long-lost drawer. As you sift through the wooden trinkets, a whirlwind of thoughts swirls around in your head. Did the other women keep their savings secret? Or were they too busy thinking of how to make ends meet? And with thoughts sparking like a faulty gas lamp, you imagine a day where you can stroll through the streets without having to dodge the lewd comments from passing gents, or dodge the smell of last week's cabbage, which, let's face it, could double as an emergency floor cleaner. Now, let's talk about that secret spot. Say it's within the dusty confines of a fraying mattress. Its springs singing you a slightly off-key lullaby about back pain and regrets. You pull out one of those coins, smooth and shiny, and it feels like the key to a freedom that just might be a little bit sticky, much like everything else in this room. Oh, the irony. For while the women in the brothel shared their lives, camaraderie forged through shared destiny and unsolicited attention, they also wove brilliant dreams of escapism. Not unlike a cat plotting to steal your breakfast. Will you use the coins to start a new life? Or will you just buy a new pair of shoes that will pinch your toes more than the glances from the gentlemen lurking below? Let's put this into a modern perspective. Picture saving pennies like trying to keep your budget in check during a summer sale. Each coin represents a morsel of hope as tantalizing as an unclaimed slice of cake at a sad office party. And we feel the same excitement, don't we? Your heart skitters in your chest, instinctively knowing that one day each shiny penny could lead to something greater. Perhaps a journey that doesn't involve a door shutting behind you with a heavy sigh. As you glance around, you notice the other workers shuffling about, all sporting expressions that could only be described as a blend of exhaustion and determination. Gorgeous tiredness, painting their faces like a master artist's stroke, yet punctuated with a hint of tragic humor. Do they have their own secret stashes? Are they keeping their own dreams alive through hushed conversations over warm tea that's more diluted than a half-hearted apology? This atmosphere teems with shared stories, triumphs, and mishaps, each coin representing not just currency, but the dream of a life unfettered by the societal chains all around you. And what do you feel deep down? A twinge of hope? A smattering of fear? Maybe a pinprick of joy? Each coin is an unfulfilled promise waiting to spill over into a world beyond these walls, where laughter and sunlight could mingle without a rigid escort. Yet when you glance back at the other women, a bustling hive of hopes, they share a connection that's utterly profound. You can't help but chuckle to yourself, isn't life just like a poorly written play, always with tragic comedy weaved through the plot twists? As the sun begins to set behind the cobblestone streets, you can't help but feel the life in that tiny, worn-out room spice up into anticipation. And so we wonder, what's next? As you tuck away your coins into your beloved secret spot, the sweetness of dreams allows you a glimpse of what could be. An escape plan that's less runaway bride and more Victorian heroine in a delightful comedy. Your future gleams brighter than the coins in your hand, a tangled web of hopes that will unfurl bit by bit as you navigate the complex dance of dreams and reality. Here's to what lies ahead, shimmering like a mirage in the twilight of your fever dream life, where joy peeks through the cracks in between. Next time we'll take on more thrilling escapades under the cloak of history. But for now, cherish that secret stash, for it holds the laughter and dreams of all who dare to live. Chapter 21. The Quiet Conundrums of Soporific Lives. Hey guys, welcome back yet again to the bizarre and mildly tragic tapestry of historical life that's more tangled than your last attempt at networking. Tonight we're delving into a scene so rich in quirky charm that even a philosopher would have trouble nodding off. It's about the economic chains of a Victorian brothel worker in 1857. Yes, that's right. Batten down the hatches and get ready for tales that are stickier than last week's marmalade. But before we take a dive deeper than your neighbor's home repairs, I need you to do me a solid. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment below, but only if you actually enjoy this little escapade through yesteryears. We're here to entertain, not to pull a snooze fest. So if your eyelids are starting to feel heavier than a sack of potatoes, we might be doing it wrong. Now let's dim those lights. Set a soothing fan on full blast to mimic the gentle Canadian breeze, or whatever the weather app incorrectly predicts, and snuggle into those pillows like a well-loved teddy bear that's seen one too many laundry days. Here's a question for you. Have you ever felt like you were saving your pennies like they were collecting dust? Or perhaps the pursuit of your dreams feels a tad more complicated than figuring out how to order takeout on a Friday night? If you answered yes, congratulations. You've just become the ideal Victorian brothel worker. Yes, I said it. Just picture yourself waking up in an era where simmering in your own sweat was considered a robust health regime, and clothing options included more layers than a lasagna at a family reunion. You find yourself standing in the dim light of a narrow hallway, where the carpet is more threadbare than a politician's promise come election season. Now, as you leave your cramped quarters, that sly sense of adventure tickles your senses. Your heart races at the prospect of finding a secret stash of coins, hidden away like those slightly expired coupons you keep promising to use. It's almost as delicious as a clandestine piece of chocolate tucked inside your sock drawer. Potentially delightful, but also risking a foul odor if your laundry piled too high. But let's remember, keeping anything hidden in this smorgasbord of shabby elegance is a task fraught with more pitfalls than an obstacle course designed by your overly competitive uncle. The hall is less of a grand entrance and more of a catwalk on a bad hair day. As you shuffle along, your mind spins. Did the other women keep their savings secret? Or are they simply pros at burying treasure, as if they were afraid of becoming the evening's entertainment for some raucous, grinning gents? Let's talk about those coin stashes, shall we? Picture this. It's a fine Saturday night in 1857, and your pocket might contain the equivalent weight of a pet hamster in scraps of metal threatening to slip through the fingers of your threadbare apron. You could practically hear them whispering, "Let us be spent wisely." Their metallic clinking is reminiscent of a pot that's just taken a tumble off the counter. Like, is it a message from the universe? Or merely the sound of your dreams chasing after that short little man with a bowler hat? The thrill of the chase. You speculate for a moment. Would you dare to use those coins to begin a life anew? Or would you simply spend them on a pair of slightly better shoes? Because, let's be honest, nothing adds to the allure of a brothel quite like shiny footwear that pinches the toes worse than a surprise Monday morning meeting. "Look at these beauties," you'd exclaim, while thinking, "These better not be the shoes that I trip over on my grand escape." Imagine for a moment a modern-day twist. Storing coins like that sad little morsel of leftovers in the back of the fridge, longing for a time when its destiny could finally be realized. A penny here, a farthing there. Eventually, you could be throwing a fabulous moving sale where everything was attached to heartbreak in some convoluted way, like the emotional baggage of an unwritten rom-com. But let's not forget the other women. The atmosphere is a concoction of laughter, whispered dreams, and the occasional blushing giggle, all layered over the faint, lingering scent of perfume that's trying its best to mask a range of less than ideal odors, like cabbage that had a little too much life experience. Here, camaraderie brews like a well-aged cocktail, tinged with mutual understanding and a sprinkling of, "Did you hear what happened last week?" behind those crimson-draped walls. You see, within these dim corridors lies a community of shared survival. Each coin, each whispered hope, holds a promise, a chance at freedom fluttering just out of reach like a kite tangled in the branches of a particularly thorny tree. Now, imagine the energy in that little space, where dreams seem to be sticking to the walls like last month's wallpaper. It's laughter mixed with yearning, and in that room, even a tinge of envy can spark camaraderie, almost like a twisted family reunion, minus the awkward small talk and potato salad. And so, as you trace your fingers along the edges of your secret stash like a master jeweler appraising rare gems, it becomes clear. The dreams of these women swirl together like ingredients in a peculiar stew. Each coin carries a weight. Each laugh hides a story. The anticipated hustle of a day stretches before you, promising both trials and triumphs. As you close your eyes for a moment, the world around you melds into possibilities. Echoing laughter and soft teases boil down into the shared understanding that tomorrow might finally be the day you break free from these quaint but confining chains. Or you might just take another turn down the alley again, where nothing is quite as cut and dry as a particularly badly written novel. So now, friend, let's voyage onward. Keep those sleepy dreams alive while we dig deeper into the whimsical yet complex life of our intrepid protagonist. Chapter 22. The enigmatic charm of a Victorian brothel stairway. Welcome back, my dear sleepy explorers. Tonight, we find ourselves not just any ordinary place, but at the top of the staircase leading down into one of the many brothels of Victorian London in 1857. You may be wondering what fascinating adventures await us in this dimly lit domain. Perhaps one filled with laughter, unexpected friendships, and slightly questionable choices. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Picture yourself at the threshold of a world where every creaky step whispers secrets, and every worn banister has felt the touch of countless eager hands. As you gently glide your fingers along the smooth wooden banister, take a moment to appreciate its history. It is as polished as the arguments between patrons and proprietors, worn down over time from the countless hands tracing its curves, akin to a well-loved pair of shoes that has seen better days, perhaps even better scents. Imagine the women of the night, their fingers sliding along this banister with the grace of a cat burglar escaping a very noisy dinner party. Each touch tells a story, each dent a reminder of the raucous laughter, shared dreams, and the slightly clammy palm of a nervous gentleman. But let's talk about these gentlemen for a moment. Can you picture them? Pomade-slicked hair, top hats higher than their eyebrows, gasping as they descend into the realms of mystery and debauchery. Their footsteps echo like a bad karaoke performance, overly confident, yet uncertain. With every step they take, the banister bears witness to clandestine meetings and whispered hopes, eventually becoming a mute spectator to the complex economic ballet that plays out just below. And let us not forget the smell, my friends. As you creep further down this heritage-rich staircase, you may find the air thick with the musky fragrance of cologne, battling it out with more robust scents. Perhaps a waft of last week's cabbage soup from the kitchen, or something distinctly floral, but almost definitely overdone. It's a war zone of aromas, where you can't quite tell if you're entering a brothel or a particularly enthusiastic flower shop that forgot to open the windows. In your mind's eye, Imagine the bustling atmosphere as you descend. The clinks and clatters of coins, so optimistic, so gleeful, bounce off the walls like a choir of fervent gamblers. Each coin holds a promise, neatly tied in the humble fabric of a shabby apron, ripe for the picking. Just think, every time you see a penny on the street in this era, it might as well be a winning lottery ticket. You wonder, are these women hoarding them? Calculating if they ought to save for a fancy pair of shoes that might pinch their toes less than their current pair? Probably. Because as a practical Victorian, there's a limit to how many dreams you can afford when you've got someone clenching the banister behind you and begging for another gin. But let's linger for a moment longer with our charming banister. It's not just a piece of wood. It's a companion in this symphony of human struggles. Each indent and smooth patch tells of dreams, some bursting like confetti and others deflating like your hopes on a Monday morning. Feeling those grooves beneath your fingertips is like touching the very pulse of this small, eclectic world, a buzzing hive of eccentric energy. Can you hear the laughter and whispers rising up from the parlors? Each room holds stories, both sultry and sorrowful, where the women trade not just their smiles, but their aspirations and worries about the future. So here you are, cradled in the arms of history, tiptoeing through a crossroad of desires, ambitions, and the occasional, oops, is that a surprise rat? For the average Victorian brothel worker, every day is a riddle wrapped in a conundrum, sprinkled with the kind of challenges that would make modern-day multitasking seem like child's play. Ah, behold the ballet of pursuit and evasion performed on this well-worn staircase. You can almost picture a woman in a puffed dress exclaiming, "Oh dear, I shall not drop this silver coin," while dodging an ungraceful suitor whose feet seem to trample over dreams like an ill-timed tavern brawl. Navigating these convoluted moments requires the grace of royalty and the strategy of a chess master. Every step downwards is an adventure packed tighter than your aunt's holiday sweater. And as you lean against this trusty banister, it becomes clear. This staircase is not just an entrance to a world of moral ambiguity, but a symbol of the complex, often unspoken economy at play. For beneath the glimmering surface lies a web of friendships snatched from the jaws of jealousy and competition. It echoes like a charming little tune, perhaps slightly off-key, where camaraderie flourishes and shared laughter mingles with twinges of regret. Thus, my whimsical wanderer, may your eyelids grow heavy with dreams of secrets buried deep within this charming world. The tales held within these wooden grooves await to unfold like a delicate flower slowly unfurling its petals in the glow of dawn. So let your imagination dance on this staircase, where every creak of the wood holds a story just waiting to be whispered into the night. And remember, each moment here may lead you deeper into the enchanting labyrinth of Victorian life, where laughter and unexpected turns await like uninvited guests at a rowdy soiree. But for now, as you rest your weary head, breathe in the scent of possibility. Stow away the day's worries, and let sweet slumber carry you into the whims and wonders of tomorrow. Sleep tight, and join me in this journey through history, because who wouldn't want to dream of economic entanglements while nestled among the comfiest of pillows? Chapter 23. The Gentle Whistles of the Cooking Hearth. Hey guys, welcome back to another night of mildly interesting history where we blend the absurd with the soothing. Tonight, will warm up our imaginations more than a Victorian kitchen on a frosty morning. Picture it, a cozy abode, snugger than your Aunt Alice's embrace after she's had a few too many sherries. We're diving into the beating heart of a Victorian brothel, where the cooking fires are lit and the aroma of something slightly questionable is wafting through the air, making its way to olfactory senses unprepared for the day's flavor adventures. As we sigh into the pages of history, you might wonder, what was it like to live in a place like this? Did the housekeeper ever get tired of yelling, "More butter!" like she was the cast of a Victorian cooking show? Did the cook have culinary dreams outside the confines of boiling cabbage and steaming mystery meat? If you're daydreaming about what it would be like to manage a historical brothel with a menu that reads more like an episode of Survivor, you're in the right place. So, dim those lights, grab a cozy blanket, and let the adventures of our brothel worker buddy accompany you into dreamland. Oh, congratulations! You've just woken up in 1857, and you're right in the middle of a well-organized chaos. You might even want to take a moment to adjust your imaginary crinoline, because you're about to witness some highly entertaining domestic discord. The house isn't just a structure, it's practically a lively orchestra of smells, sounds, and a few colorful characters, even if one of them is taken to wearing mismatched socks because apparently fashion choices were a gamble even in their era. The kitchen is where everything unfolds, where the rhythm of daily life is orchestrated like a badly performed ballet. The fire crackles cheerfully, giving off a glow that casts dancing shadows on the walls, which you might once have thought were stylish if you squint just right. You can almost hear the housekeeper's voice, a bubbly chorus of directives that would make even a pirate's first mate feel inadequate. No, not that one. The carrots need to be chopped like they're doing the can-can, not in the shape of despair. Amidst this delightful chaos, the cook is a whirlwind of energy, likely swearing a bit under their breath while stirring a questionable pot of stew, motivation levels oscillating between "I love my job" and "Who signed me up for this?" The aroma of hearty fare is comforting, almost like a cozy hug, if hugs could also have a hint of last week's questionable fish. But its salt-of-the-earth groans and the occasional "Oh dearest potato, why do you mock me?" that make the whole scene charming and relatable. Just imagine dipping a spoon into that bubbling concoction and wondering if it's going to be a gourmet delight or an affront to all taste buds. In fact, you might be thinking, is this the birthplace of the phrase feast or famine? Because, my friend, nobody wants to end up with a plate that could double as a doorstop. In this culinary gambit, every meal served is kind of like playing a game of Russian roulette, minus the fun. Just replace gunpowder with mashed turnips. And have you ever tried prepping dinner while simultaneously conducting a chorus of cries from the parlor? It's like hosting a dinner party with an orchestra that is just discovering its rhythm and maybe forgot about percussion completely. The sounds of revelers echo through the walls, laughter mingling with the occasional "I'm telling you, I summoned the devil's cabbage." Imagine, here you are, chopping onions and dodging errant tavern songs as you navigate the fine line between culinary artist and would-be juggler. You get the feeling that a couple of these ladies might just be one off-key note away from unceremoniously joining you in the kitchen, demanding a spot in the next best stew. As the housekeeper pulls up to you with a handful of herbs, it's like you've been initiated into a world where cooking Olympics meet the Victorian version of Hell's Kitchen. Each herb
is treated like a hidden treasure, though you might find yourself contemplating why anyone thought dried sage was the spice of the century. It's more like someone's slightly wilted ideas of flavor, which, I assure you, is exactly how the economy of brothel life works. Scarcity meets creativity, and somehow someone manages to turn stale bread into a delicacy, and you begin to wonder if bread is indeed the original hipster food. But let's not get too lost in culinary debates. These are women of ambition, navigating paths laden with delicate decisions that could lead them to prosperity, or, let's face it, a visit from the local rat, who has also laid claim to the same leftovers. So, when you hear the occasional, "Quick, hide the cheese," know that it's not only about despairing over moldy, cured meats, but also about wanting to choose better options, not unlike deciding between two questionable snack choices at 2 a.m. So as we drift along in this cozy Victorian broth, let your eyelids grow heavy with the tantalizing aromas of history's sitcom, the domestic tales that are just waiting to be told, one spoonful at a time. You're on the edge of sleep, inching forward on the stage of dreams, and remember, while the stew may simmer under the housekeeper's watchful eye, your dreams are simmering too, a rich concoction of laughter, history, and the absurdity of it all. Sleep sweetly, knowing the stories of this time will always be brewing, just like the broth that's lovingly stirred beyond our view.
Chapter 24. The Bountiful Brews of the Victorian Kitchen. Imagine sliding through a doorway into the kitchen's warm embrace, where the air is saturated with a symphony of enticing aromas. Coffee, freshly baked bread, the indulgent sizzle of bacon, and a hint of wood smoke drifting leisurely like a slow-moving cloud of comfort. It's enough to make your stomach rumble like a bear awakening from hibernation, or, perhaps more appropriately, like a Victorian chimney sweep making his way through a narrow alley after missing brunch. You realize that's breakfast in a brothel kitchen, folks. As you stand there, your senses tingling with anticipation, it's hard to ignore the raucous chaos that defines this bustling environment. Picture a cook zooming back and forth, wielding a ladle like a conductor commanding an orchestra of ingredients, while the housekeeper shouts out orders like a drill sergeant managing a fleet of undercooked potatoes. "More butter," she commands, as if the fate of the galaxy hinges on the creaminess of whatever is bubbling away in the cauldron. And you wonder, did she ever stop to think, should this really be my calling? Or is there a career as a psychic out there waiting for me? You look around and see the countertops cluttered with bowls of ingredients, potatoes resembling wayward tennis balls, and carrots cut at such odd angles they might as well be auditioning for a role in an avant-garde play. How do these vegetables feel under all this pressure? Surely they yearn for a life where they aren't relegated to the shadows of boiling pots and cauldrons overflowing with questionable stews. Yes, I'm a carrot, a particularly bulbous one seems to sigh, but today I'm merely a garnish for regret. Now, let's address the culinary masterpiece that's forming before you. As the cook stirs, you catch a whiff of something particularly intriguing wafting from that pot of stew. Is that savory, or is it a desperate cry for help? Either way, in the realm of Victorian gastronomy, it's like opening a mystery box filled with both hope and dread. Each ladleful could be a contest-winning dish, or a daring challenge to your taste buds that might inspire regrets in the form of intense facial expressions. You might think the brothel's clientele would expect more sophistication, but alas, the culinary department couldn't quite shake off its medieval roots. Feast or famine, you mutter to yourself, pondering this culinary Russian roulette. It's like ordering the chef's special at a questionable diner. Sometimes it's love at first bite, but often it ends with you wondering if you need to donate the plate to science. And just when you thought the kitchen couldn't be more chaotic, the sounds of merriment and mischief seep in from the parlor. Laughter mingles with shouts, a cacophony that feels like a mashup of all the best parts of life. Imagine mixing a sitcom and a circus act, where every character might unexpectedly break into song about their daily woes, or the semi-delicious nature of what's brewing just a few feet away. I'm telling you, that cabbage nearly had a séance, you might hear a lady declare, her arms gesturing wildly like she's trying to take flight. Now, let us focus on the housekeeper, the true MVP of this operation. She's like the guardian of culinary sanity, someone who somehow possesses both the patience of a saint and the urgency of a caffeinated squirrel. "Hurry!" she'll shout, wielding a whisk like a scepter. "We need that soufflé to rise before the clock strikes chaos." It's a delicate juggling act. One moment could lead to culinary triumph or an impending disaster, causing a dinner that's neither sweet nor savory, but a menagerie of disappointed expectations. Just think about the complexity of preparing meals like this. Deftly navigating between shapeless lumps of something resembling risotto and haphazardly infused herbs that may or may not have come from the backyard herb garden or a crushed-up old shoe. I remember a time when I dreamed of exotic dishes and fine china. The cook may reflect, while sneaking in a star anise or two, hoping it creates a culinary work of art instead of a crime scene. Eventually, as the aromas waft over to you like the promises of a mystical fairy tale, your eyes land on a pot, the contents bubbling with such enthusiasm that it might just overtake the stove. "Let's do this," you cheer, trying to summon your inner Victorian chef. But as the pot spills enthusiastically onto the fire, you realize it's more like channeling a chaotic artist, frustrated with their own paint. There's a moment of pandemonium, more befitting a slapstick comedy movie than actual cooking. Remember, you're not just dining, you're diving into the colorful chaos of Victorian brothel life, where dining is a team sport, and every spoonful could lead to unforeseen disaster, or perhaps culinary brilliance that marries the unexpected with the delightful. Voila, you imagine declaring, while snickering at the possibility of your food being a surprise contestant on an adventurous cooking show. So, as we meander through this captivating kitchen abode, let your eyelids grow heavy, lulled by the aroma of the stories simmering just beyond our reach. The laughter and chaos will fade gently, creating a soothing breeze that drifts you serenely toward the land of dreams, where bacon, stew, and vibrantly chaotic gatherings coexist in an endless culinary bliss. Sleep well, knowing that even in a Victorian brothel kitchen, adventure is always a whisk away. Chapter 25. The Hidden Economic Chains of a Victorian Brothel Worker. Now that we've seasoned our minds with the delightful chaos of life in a Victorian kitchen, let's gently slide deeper into the steamy shadows of the brothel world. Imagine, if you will, being a woman living in the year 1857 as you navigate the tangled web of expectations, desires, and economic chains tight enough to make a Victorian corset look loose. Yes, A world where your life choices might feel like choosing between two particularly unpleasant types of porridge. Picture it, waking up in a chamber painted with the hues of faded rose and whispering secrets. As sunlight peeks through sheer lace curtains, it feels almost like a gentle invasion. There's a moment where you could roll over and hit snooze, fate, but instead, the brothel's chatter filters into your dreams, merging reality and absurdity in a cacophony of life. What does every day look like for a woman caught in the whirlwind of this dubious career choice? You wonder if today will be like yesterday, or if it will present you with an unexpected twist, perhaps involving a new client whose favorite drink is suspiciously reminiscent of mushroom soup. Spoiler alert, it often is. As you step onto the chilly wooden floors, your toes recoil in a surprisingly dramatic fashion, much like a cat confronted with a cucumber. The ground floor becomes your stage, where every step is a performance best described as a ballet of awkwardness. Trying to find the fluffy slippers, the actual comfort you crave, feels like conducting a treasure hunt during an earthquake. And let's talk about attire. The dresses of the Victorian era were both splendid in design and brutally constricting. A corset swaths your midsection tighter than your grandmother's unsolicited advice at a family gathering. Adjusting it becomes a morning ritual, akin to preparing for battle. You yank and pull, hoping for merely an average level of discomfort. Your reflection gazes back at you, the flutter of mascara like you're moments away from stepping on stage for a Gatsby-inspired dance-off. But then you remind yourself, oh right, this isn't a party. This is my job. Then there's breakfast. Can we just take a moment to address what constitutes nourishment in a Victorian brothel? Imagine a haphazardly assembled plate of dubious origins. It looks like a buffet of regret. Old bread, maybe a hunk of cheese that could wield a grudge, and the mystery meat that could either be beef or the remnants of last week's festivities. Bon appetit! As you make your way to the parlor, you can hear voices, laughter, and occasionally a raucous shout. Probably someone trying to charm the pants off a potential suitor through a particularly awful pun about turnips. Aren't you glad I didn't say radishes? You can almost hear someone cackle. When you think about it, the social skills being honed here could lead to a stellar career as a stand-up comedian or a hesitant court jester. But amidst the revelry lies the truth. This vibrant facade is only a thin veneer coating the economic chains that are binding you tighter than that aforementioned corset. You crack a smile, but deep down, you're all too aware of the fluctuating pendulum that is a brothel worker's financial security. Each night can feel like a spin of roulette. Will it be gold coins or a handful of cobwebs? The suspense is all part of the charm, or perhaps the curse. And let's not forget your so-called co-workers. You've got the peacock in the corner who struts about with an air of confidence that could impress even Queen Victoria herself. She's charming and witty, with a memory like an elephant for the questionable behaviors of clients. You? Well, let's just say you've mastered the art of blending into the wallpaper. At least until someone orders wall decor. The truth is, all your choices lead to this moment. standing in front of a mirror, the curls in your hair dancing through the chaos, a hastily sewn dress draping itself around your figure, and the unshakable question racing through your mind: what's for dinner? And as you catch a glimpse of the glimmering eyes of hopeful clientele, you wonder if this will be a good night. Financial, of course. Yet behind each exchange there's an absurd layer of humanity that laces camaraderie and competition into an unlikely tapestry. Each woman fights not just for her place in the world, but for the delight of being understood within a world where nobody truly sees beyond the surface. Perhaps there is solidarity to be found here, amidst the absurdity, getting closer to the margins of shared experiences. As you prepare for what might unfold tonight, understanding the paradox of freedom and constraints becomes second nature. You strut into this bustling arena, filled with laughter, hope, and terrors, as you embrace your role in this ever-dynamic stage of life. And as the last patrons hug the corners of the parlor, and the evening hums its soothing lullaby, there comes a moment of serene realization. You are not alone in this dance of life. So, dear dreamer, as you wrap yourself in the warmth of this time and space, allow the stories of those who walked these paths before to cradle you gently into slumber. For every choice you make tonight, aligns with countless others who have sought solace in their own wishes and whims. Let this be a gentle reminder. You are part of a legacy that weaves through absurdities, constraints, and shared laughter. Drift into sleep, carrying the strength of a collective journey, tucked under the alluring layers of time. A soothing bedspread for your restless mind. And now, as we leave her world behind, this narrow room, this chill morning, this quiet little battlefield made of linen, ledgers, and borrowed breath, it's worth pausing for a moment, not just to see the hardship, but to understand the astonishing persistence of the people who lived through it anyway. History often remembers the loud things: wars, kings, inventions, disasters. But most lives were lived in the small hours, in dim rooms, on tired feet, behind walls that never once learned how to keep the cold out. Survival wasn't heroism, not in the dramatic sense. It was just getting up again tomorrow, with nothing in your pockets but a little humor and a very stubborn refusal to give in. For women like her, dignity was something you built from scraps. A ribbon mended twice, a sleeve re-sewn in bad light, a single private laugh that no ledger could tax. The world gave them almost nothing, and somehow they still made meaning out of crumbs. So if your room is warm tonight, if your blanket is yours, and your time is your own, if you can close your eyes without debt breathing down your neck like a second shadow, that is no small blessing. Modern comfort isn't ordinary. It's the luxury they never got to cash in. Take a slow breath. Let the weight of the day fall off your shoulders. You are already living a softness half the world never even got to dream of. Rest now, gently, quietly, knowing that you carry the proof of their endurance, just by existing in a world made warmer by all the ones who came before. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next chapter